Good evening. Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the flag salute. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is the Wall Township Board of Education meeting for which adequate notice under the Open Public Meeting Act was provided by a notice to the Asbury Park Press, Co-Star, Township Administration Office, all Wall Township Public Schools, and the Board Administration Office on September 19th, 2019. Take a roll call. Mr. Krupa.
Present.
Ms. Mangan.
Here.
Mr. Sanfilippo.
Here.
Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Sullivan has an excused absence.
Mr. Wondrak. Here. Mr. Addonizio.
Here. Okay. So we are going to start with interviews for our vacant seats. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, we're on number 5. Recommended approval for to accept the resignations of Ms. Robin Zwaniak, Ms. Dorothy Malloy, and Michael MacArthur as members of the Wall Township Board of Education. Could I have a motion?
I'll make the motion. Second.
Take a roll call. Mr. Krupa.
Yes.
Ms. Mangan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanfilippo.
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan. Oh, sorry. Mr. Wondrak. Yes. Mr. Addonizio.
Yes. Okay. Now we are going to start interviews. So our first interview is Sarah. Come on up, Sarah. Good evening. Welcome. Thank you for putting your name in. So I'm going to ask you 4 questions. They're going to be the same 4 questions we ask everyone, just to keep it consistent. So first one, please share how your interest in serving in the Wall Board of Education developed.
Education's always been something I've been very interested in. I had a background in education throughout college before I decided on a career change. But education is the basis of our future society. I mean, our children, not to be cliche, are our future. And what they learn here in our Wall Township schools, which I am a product of, and I'm proud to be one, proud to be a Knight. I think it's important that they have a strong, beginning in order to make the best of what they can be in their future lives, which will impact not only, hopefully, Wall Township, hopefully they are able to say as I was, but wherever they go in this country, in this world, in the world as a whole.
Okay. What is your understanding of the role of the Board of Education and the role of the board member?
From what I understand, the Board of Education is sort of the liaison between the taxpayers of Wall Township and the way that the education system is carried out in the schools, insofar as the board wants to do what's in the best interest for both. They want to do what's in the best interest in the way that their taxes are spent on the education, and they also are advocates for the students and the staff in the system as well. Okay. As a board member, sort of the same answer. I mean, you want to act in what's in the best interest for everyone. Now, unfortunately, you're going to have to make tough decisions, as I'm sure you folks will have to do tonight. But you want to make sure that you have a set goal, and you want to be able to combine, like I said, the interests for everyone into that goal, what's going to be best in the end.
Okay. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing the board and the biggest challenge facing the district?
I think currently it has a lot to do with some issues that have come up over the last year or so with the bus housing as well as the trailers at Central School. Those seem to be very big issues that the board, I'm sure, is having a really hard time facing. And I would look forward to, helping in trying to find solutions for those.
Okay. And which of our current district initiatives do you find most valuable or are you most excited about at this time?
I was reading online about, under the curriculum and instruction areas, that there's going to be, interest in a lot of internships and externships. Some outside of the box thinking in terms of education. I've always been a big proponent of that. Like I said, I went into college as an education major, and I decided I wanted to change careers. It wasn't necessarily a field that I wanted to pursue professionally, something I've always had an interest in, but had I had more experience and had I been exposed more to maybe different avenues, I would have chosen a different career path sooner. So that's something that I think is really cool that Wall might be doing.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
I know I'm young, and I haven't unfortunately really been able to be a part of the community as much as I would have liked since I've lived here. I'm finally in a place in my life where I have everything else kind of taken care of, and now I have more time and ability to devote myself more to things that I really believe in, and this is something I really do believe in.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.
Good evening. Well, thank you for coming out. I am going to ask you the same 4 questions that we're going to ask everybody. All right? So first question is, please share your interest in serving on the Wall Board of Education, how that developed.
Well, I have 2 children in the Wall system. I have a 6th grader and a high schooler, senior. I had my first child through Catholic school, and comparing the 2, I absolutely think Wall did an outstanding job. I'm very proud of our school system. I think that, from my personal perspective, from where my youngest son was to where he is today, I attributed a lot to the teachers, the administration, and all the support services he got. Also, my senior was a Hobie recipient for the school. He was selected in the sophomore year, which was a very nice honor to be chosen from the school. So I really think that Wall does a nice job in recognizing children's potential and actually giving them opportunities to expand on it.
What is your understanding of the role of the Board of Education and the role of a board member?
Okay. The Board of Education establishes and updates district policies. It develops and renews annual school budgets. It has input and reviews the school curriculum. It's a link between the community and the superintendent, and it participates in negotiations with teachers' union as required.
Okay.
And as a board member, you ensure the district is responding to the values and beliefs of the priorities of the Wall community.
Okay. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the board and the district? The biggest challenges facing the board and the biggest challenges facing the district.
As far as the board, ensuring a quality education is provided with available resources and a budget that meets the needs of the stakeholders, which includes the administration, taxpayers, and our students. And the district is working within the confines of a budget while managing and addressing unplanned expenditures.
Okay. Which of our current district initiatives do you find most valuable or are you most excited about at this time?
I'm excited about the initiatives of the laptops that have been placed in our schools. I think it basically levels the playing field for everybody. So when you're at home, you not only, and I think it's great that you're even educating the parents on how to go into the Google platforms, which is carried throughout the whole entire school year for somebody to use for our children, that you're educating the parent, which it's the parent's responsibility to know what the child is doing to make sure that all the assignments and we're keeping up and keeping our teachers, helping our teachers with the assignments that they are doing.
Okay. And is there anything else you'd like to add?
In addition to being a nurse, I do have a strong environmental field background. I worked 20 plus years for the Environmental Protection Agency as a contractor. So as far as environmental issues, I'm pretty versed on them. I was an operations manager.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. Good evening, Mr. Garths. I'm going to ask you the same 4 questions that we're going to ask everyone. Okay. To keep it fair. So we'll start with number 1. How did your interest in serving on the Wall Board of Education develop?
It began, I lived in town for a little over a year and a half, a little over a year actually, and just watching what's been going on and seeing some of the decisions that the board has made and watching some of the meetings on video, I just felt as though there was an opportunity to lend some experience and some leadership to the board, and wanted to chime in on some of the challenges, and think I'm been around the block a few times with my experience as a teacher early in my career and working in nonprofit organizations most of my career, having my own business for a period of time, so I think I have a vast array of experience that could contribute to the success of the board.
Okay. What is your understanding of the role of the Board of Education and the role of a board member?
The role of the board is to hire a superintendent that will administer and manage, the daily operations of the school district and report back to the board as the sole employee. And the board's responsibility is to make sure they're managing that superintendent, leading that superintendent in a way to make sure the information transfer is appropriate, that the board is not caught off guard by any information, but also to help strategically plan where the school district should be going based on feedback, test results, challenges, physical plant issues, and so on and so forth. So really to be more strategic when it's appropriate, and yet have to get down in the weeds if necessary.
Okay. What do you see as the biggest challenges or challenge facing the board and the biggest challenge facing the district?
I think there's a few, I think any board, a board by nature is an unnatural group of people coming together to solve a problem. So by its very nature, board management is difficult. I think regaining the trust of the community is important for this board as a primary challenge. I think some of the challenges in the last year, and maybe longer than that for some who've been around for it, have caused a strain between the public and the board. So I think regaining that level of trust and leadership at the strategic level is extremely important. And what was the secondary question?
And facing the district.
Yeah, I mean, every district is under a strain from a financial standpoint. There's so much of the budget that's already accounted for before day one of school starts for, based on requirements that the state has on us, or contracts with teachers on salaries and benefits and such. So trying to continue to grow the opportunity for curriculum growth and student advancement and student opportunities with a very limited opportunity to raise more money from generally most communities that don't want to do that, and that's a hard balance.
Which of the current district initiatives do you find most valuable or are you most excited about at this time?
I think there's a number of them that stand out. I think the strategic vision of the district is important to continue to maintain, and the board's responsibility to work back off of that strategic plan to make sure that whatever was agreed to several years ago is being followed through. And curious to know what the reporting structure is and how that's trickling down through the superintendent, through the other staff members, to make sure that if we agreed to it X amount of years ago, that we either follow through with it or we kind of cut it off the list and get ready for the next strategic plan, whatever that might be. So obviously there's also the challenges of the current situations that have risen that have caused the trust to wane away, and to try to regain the trust of the community. So it's a little bit of both strategic as well as operational challenges.
Okay. And is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I'm excited about the opportunity to possibly join the group that's here and move the ball down the field as appropriate.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Hall. Good. All right, so going to ask you the same 4 questions that we're going to ask everyone to keep it fair. And you ready? Okay. All right. Please share how your interest in serving on the Wall Board of Education developed.
I would say that serving the town has been something I've been doing pretty much my whole adult life. Started when my kids were small, being involved in youth sports, which led to me becoming president of Little League for 6 years, being involved in it for 9, and I'm still one of the trustees there. That led to me becoming involved in different boards on the town, the Recreation Committee, the Mobile Home Rent Stabilization Board, the Marconi Road Complex, and then the Planning Board, which I've been on for the last almost 7 years. So I think I've been working my way in different aspects for the town, and I think this is just a natural progression. So I think that's kind of where I'm at now.
Okay. What is your understanding of the role of a Board of Education and the role of a board member?
Well, I think the basic role of the board is just a broad policy for the district. Basically, be the voice of the people. Basically, the board should institute policies that has, I think, broad support from the town. I also think that they are responsible for giving the superintendent the tools and resources she needs or he needs to carry out the objectives that the board has given them. So I think that's the basic overview of the board. I think a board member's responsibility is the oversight, is all of the 9 of members of the board are all working adults that have jobs and careers themselves. So we entrust the superintendent and the business administrator and the principals of the school to run the district in the way that the district wants it to be run. But as with anything, I think the board members here their goal should be to make sure that what the board as a whole is looking to do is actually being done. So I think that's what an individual board member's responsibility should be. Should be more oversight and making sure that the board is running, that the school is running as effectively as it can be.
Okay. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the board and the biggest challenges facing the district?
I think there's probably 2 each. I think for the board, I think it's always the budget and, of course, the trust factor that you've had with some of the issues that have happened over the last couple of years. So I think those 2 things, the budget is always a problem. People are always concerned about the budget, and then the trust that the board has with the public, I think, is that's the challenge there. For the district itself, that's things that's in this board's control. They can control the budget, they can control the perception and the trust factor. What they can't control, I think, is more of a district issue, depending on who was on the board, would be the Mount Laurel's potential increase in population for the town and more children. So that's going to be something outside of this board. Any board would have to deal with that. And also the infrastructure, which, again, no matter what board was here, I think any board is going to have to deal with that. So I think that's more of a district-wide problem, is looking at our infrastructure and seeing how we can, manage that as we don't want, any more surprises. So we got to get on top of that. So I think that's a district-wide. Again, that's, if we got 9 people off the street, I think that would be the same, whether for this board or for any board.
Okay. Which of the current district initiatives do you find most valuable or are you most excited about at this time?
Right. Well, that's a great question, and I screwed it up when I was here once before. The Crimson College was what I was looking for then, and I remembered it now. That's I think that is really. I mean, when I heard about that, this was even months and months and months before I started becoming involved with the board. I thought that whoever came up with that deserves credit, because I think that having an ability to give children in this district who want to do more, and maybe they're held back by the constraints of the curriculum now, give them more to be able to reach out and take college credits right here, through the Brookdale partnership is a great thing. So I think that's a home run. And then the second thing is, I think even again a year ago or so, when you guys came up with your 5-year plan for aging infrastructures, which again became kind of I don't know what you would call it, like foreshadowing, I guess, when I looked at that, I was like, wow, those guys are going to be on top of that. I think, again, I went to school here back in the, long time ago, so I know some of these things are in need of repair and need upkeep, and again, it's not sexy. Nobody wants to spend money on it. Everybody wants to spend money on the stuff they can do, but I think you guys, the previous board, I thought did a good job at least attempting to identify what issues that they needed to spend money on, and then trying to come up with a list and prioritize them, and deciding where our resource could go to best affect real progress.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just am hoping I have an opportunity to serve. I think you guys are the tenor and the what I'm seeing on the board from being an audience member have been very encouraged, and I believe that if I could be an asset to the team here with my financial background and again my love of Wall Township, I think that's something that hopefully you guys will see fit to appoint me, and if not, I'll see you in January.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a good one.
Very true.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Make sure you're Mr. Nazar?
Nasser, yes.
Nassar, I'm sorry.
No, no worries.
All right. I am going to ask you the same 4 questions that we've been asking everyone. Keep it fair. All right. And first question, please share how your interest in serving on the Wall Board of Education developed.
I've been interested in serving on a board for quite a while. I've been involved in education for quite some time. Governance is always something that I've been interested in getting more experience out. I've watched boards develop. I've watched the interactions with boards for years. So that, in combination with a lot of everything that's going on, really got me interested, and we decided that this was a good time.
Okay. What is your understanding of the role of a Board of Education and the role of a board member?
Well, the role of Board of Ed is to make the budget, set policies and regulations, and pick a superintendent. Other than that, I believe it's acting as a conduit between, and almost a public relations type role between the public and the administration to manage the interactions back and forth and make sure that the district as a whole is headed in the right direction.
Okay. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the board and the biggest challenge facing the district?
A lot of uncertainty right now. You're going to have that all the time, but I think there's a strange confluence of a lot of uncertainty right now that, it causes a breakdown in trust. It causes a breakdown in communication and listening too. And everybody will get through it. The community will get through it. It'll come out stronger in the end, but getting through what can be a rough patch, especially with all your building that's going on, all the external events, you got state funding issues, there's just a lot of uncertainty that needs to be worked through right now.
Okay. Which of the current district initiatives do you find most valuable or are you most excited about at this time?
Right now, currently that are happening, I think there's a lot, but I think technology and security are definitely things that are close to my heart. Obviously, you have my resume, so you can probably understand why. Also, special education has been something I've loved working with and watched develop over the past decade or so. It's changed and morphed, similar to how technology has just been very, very fast in how it's developing. And it's something that I look forward to watching in my own professional career and here at the district as well.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to
add? Not really. I mean, there's a reason I'm here, and it's because I do have a lot of experience. I work with boards every day, not just in my professional career, but also helping other districts out and navigating situations that are similar to what we're dealing with here. And I've seen districts go through rough times, and I've seen districts go through good times, and it's a cycle, and we will get through it as a community no matter what. And like I said before, we're going to come out stronger because of it.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hi. I'm going to ask you the same 4 questions we've asked everybody else. Keep it fair. You all set?
Yep.
Okay. So, number 1, please share how your interest in serving on the Wall Board of Education developed.
Yeah, so I've been living in Wall now for about 6 years. My husband is a long-time Wall resident. I've been wanting to get more engaged in the community. I think one of the strategic goals of the district, really looking for community engagement and doing some outreach. And when I saw the opportunities to serve on the board, it's something I had been thinking about but hadn't taken any steps, and the opportunity presented itself. So I thought I would go ahead and seize that and come and see and leverage the skills that I have from my career and personal life to be able to serve for the residents and taxpayers.
Okay. What is your understanding of the role of the Board of Education and the role of a board member?
Oh, I feel like with my background, that's a loaded question. So one of the things I think most important for a board, given what I've done, is the oversight that the board has over the finances and the day-to-day operations of the board, specifically making the budget, making sure that the budget's trending well, any amendments that need to happen, understanding how do you keep the balance, how do you keep the tax levy under control, recognizing that the district has its own independent levying power, but kind of taking into play what the total tax bill is. I always like to say residents don't really care who's levying the tax, they just care about that total bill. And I think that's a really important role that the board has to play. And it's so important for it to happen critically because the district has to be able to educate students and to do a wonderful job and to provide that community feel and the opportunity for the children of the township, and at the same time be beholden to the taxpayers who are funding it and balance those opportunities. And I think that's the role that the most important role the board plays.
Okay. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing the board and the biggest challenge facing the district?
Oh, I think this is something that faces numerous school districts throughout the state. Apologies, my phone. It keeps getting bounced and the ringer won't turn off. It's the second time it's happened to me this week. I should probably replace it. I think the biggest challenge facing the district, as I started to say, facing many districts across the state, there's a kind of 3 things that are kind of happening that I think really pressure operations. So you have changing demographic trends. You have enrollments that have been declining in this district throughout the state, many districts facing the same thing. That really does kind of pressure capital needs and kind of look at where you kind of moving teachers and salaries and kind of how do you manage that while still providing a top-notch quality education and staying loyal to your employees and what you have. Then you also have the pension pressure. School districts are very lucky that they have a very limited kind of pressure coming from that situation, but I think you get the tax pressure from the municipality side. As the municipals have to raise their levies to pay those rising pension costs, again, it comes down to that total tax bill. It doesn't matter who's levying it. What really matters is what the total bill is. And so as you kind of get pressured out from the tax rate overall, how does the district stay that much more operationally beneficial if the munis have to go ahead and raise the tax rate? And that's something that we're seeing here at the township. And then the last piece of it is the changing nature of the school funding environment in the state and what's been happening there. And Wall being a more wealthy district than even some of our neighbors, not getting a lot of aid from the state, so really heavily relying on that property tax revenue. And so all of that makes a very challenging fiscal environment. And then at the same time, in those conditions, how do you provide the most thorough and efficient education for students? And how do you do what needs to be done to raise engaging citizens who are ready to go out, go to college, go to opportunities, and be the best well-educated students that the district can produce?
Okay. Which of our current district initiatives do you find most valuable, or are you most excited about at this time?
I cited it for one of the reasons that I'm here tonight. I really liked the community outreach and engagement initiative. I don't yet have kids in the district, and so I haven't really felt that, and so I really was encouraged by the fact that that's something the district's working on and looking at and thinking about the different ways that you can engage somebody like me who isn't necessarily in the schools day to day, but would really like to be more involved. How do you do that, and what does that look like? And I think that's a really interesting opportunity, in addition to some of the wonderful other things that are going on, not to dismiss any of the other initiatives, but I think that one personally speaks to me.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
I don't know. What do you think is the board's greatest challenge and that you think I could bring skills to help with?
Oof. There's many.
Various answers,
Yes.
depending on who we were to ask.
Yeah, so, all right. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So, at this time, I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss, as per item 7. Could I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor, right, this one? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Oh, we'll be back by 7:30. Correction, we will be back at approximately 7:45.
And we're going to do it for items 1, 5, 7, and 8.
Items 1, 5, 7, and 8. Good evening. We are going to reconvene our meeting, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take a roll call. Mr. Krupa? Ms. Mangan?
Here.
Mr. Sanfilippo? Here. Mr. Wondrak?
Here.
Mr. Adenizio?
Here. Okay. At this time, I will accept a nomination for the appointment of a candidate to the Walton Township Board of Education to fill the vacancy of the resignation of Ms. Robin Zwaniak. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to motion Mr. Gartz.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments? Mr. Smythe, roll call.
Mr. Krupa?
Yes.
Ms. Mangan?
Yes.
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Yes.
Mr. Wondrak?
Yes.
Mr. Adenizio?
Yes. Okay, number 11, could I have a motion, a nomination for a candidate to the Walton Township Board of Education for the resignation created by Dory Malloy?
I'd like to make a recommendation nomination for Mr. Joseph Hall.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments? Seeing none, Mr. Smythe?
Ms. Mangan?
Yes.
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Yes.
Mr. Wondrak?
Yes.
Mr. Krupa?
Yes.
Mr. Adenizio?
Yes. Number 13, accept the nomination for the appointment to the board to fill the vacancy created by Mr. MacArthur.
I'd like to make a motion. Mr. Nasser?
Do you have a second?
Second?
Any questions, comments? Seeing none, Mr. Smythe?
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Yes.
Mr. Wondrak?
Yes.
Mr. Krupa?
Yes.
Ms. Mangan?
Yes.
Mr. Adenizio?
Yes. Okay. All right, congratulations. If you gentlemen would like to come down, Mr. Gross will swear you in.
Mr. Gartz.
Disqualified due to conviction of a crime.
I think we have 3 seats available, right?
We're going to him.
And if I could have you guys just sign sign at the bottom, I will take your.
And then also, yes, sign the nominated receipt of the code of ethics.
Okay. Mr. Smythe, new roll call, please.
Mr. Krupa,
Here.
Ms. Mangan,
Here.
Mr. Sanfilippo,
Here.
Mr. Wondrak,
Here.
Mr. Gartz,
Here.
Mr. Hall. Here. Mr. Nasser,
Here.
Mr. Adenizio.
Here.
Very good.
All right. Welcome to our new board members. Thank you for taking time out to interview, and for the two of you who we're going to run this year anyway. We appreciate it. All right. Now we're going to forge ahead. Number 16, no special presentation. Or number 15 first. I'm sorry, number 15, skipping ahead. Oh, and I'd like to thank the other candidates. I thanked them before they left, but putting themselves out here to come for an interview and try to help the school district and the town should be commended, and we certainly appreciate them for doing that. And you know, hopefully in the future they'll continue to stay involved and come for any other openings or activities that we have. All right. Number 15, nominations for Board of Education Vice President. Can I have nominations, please?
Make a motion for Chris for vice president.
Okay.
I second.
Second. Any other nominations? Seeing none, roll call vote, Mr. Smythe, or Secretary cast one ballot? How's that work?
Take a roll call vote.
Okay.
Mr. Krupa,
Yes.
Ms. Mangan,
Yes.
Mr. Sanfilippo.
I vote for myself?
Sure you can.
I vote for myself.
Should have went to you first, actually. But Mr. Wondrak,
Yes.
Mr. Gartz,
Yes.
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Nasser,
Yes.
Mr. Adenizio.
Yes. Congratulations, Chris.
Congratulations.
Thank you. All right. Number 16, we don't have any special presentations. And number 17, student representative vote. Our new students, welcome.
Yes, if I could introduce our student representatives. Thank you all for coming tonight. We have Riley Adam and Montana Dobrovich-Vago, and also in the audience tonight, our alternate, Isabel Casillas. So thank you all for your anticipated service to the Board of Education.
Good evening, Mr. Adenizio, Superintendent Dyer, and members of the Board of Education. My name is Riley Adam. I am an AP student at Wall High School, as well as being involved with extracurriculars and sports outside of the classroom. I am the captain of the girls' varsity lacrosse team and a member of the mock trial team. I am also a member of Heroes and Cool Kids, Student Council, Peer Leaders, World Language Club, and the National Honor Society. I'm excited to have been chosen as a representative, and I look forward to becoming even more involved in both the school and the community.
Hi, my name is Montana Birch-Fago, and I'm involved in many clubs and activities within Wall High School. I'm the senior class president, the Wall Business and Finance Academy president, and I also take part in National Honor Society, World Language Club, Wall TV, Student Advisory, and play on the girls' varsity golf team. I'm excited to accept the great responsibility of being a student representative and hope to give insight of what great involvement our students have within the Wall Township community.
Academically, Wall High School students started off the school year with great scores on their May AP exams with a 94% passing rate. This is well above average, and the students who passed these tests should be extremely proud of their accomplishments. Furthermore, the seniors received their updated class ranks, and the students in the top 10 should be proud of their hard work and incredible GPAs. The senior class kicked off the year with a great fundraiser. Over the summer, the class of 2020 students were able to purchase and paint a personal parking spot in the senior lot. The fundraiser allowed students to put their creativity on display for the whole school to see. There were a variety of designs from cartoon characters to initials to all sorts of logos. Both Montana and I painted our spots, and I painted my spot with my initials and multicolored polka dots. This turned out to be a great fundraiser for our class, as well as a way for students to connect and see the ideas of others, so make sure to check it out when you drive by. Our class raised $400 from the fundraiser, and we plan to use the money for our Pep Week activities.
Wall Knight sports are starting the year off strong. The Crimson Knights football team have won 3 games in a row and have yet to be defeated. Families and students showed support at the first home game of the season on September 13th, as well to see the cheerleaders and band perform during halftime. The girls' field hockey team have a total of 5 wins and are dominating their season. Just yesterday, both our boys and girls varsity soccer teams won over Manasquan. Make sure to check out the high school's homepage to check when the next sports games are. We both want to thank you very much, Mr. Adnesio, Superintendent Dyer, and members of the Board of Education for this wonderful opportunity to serve as the student representatives for the 2019-2020 school year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for them? No? Okay.
I just want to say it's always nice when we beat Manasquan multiple times in one day.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are free to go. I'm sure you have homework and,
Or you can stay.
or you could stay.
It's up to you.
I need sleep.
Tomorrow morning comes early. Thank you. Good night. If you guys want to slide down a little bit to have more room, you can. Okay. All right. So, give my little president's report here. Couple things. It's been a kind of a very busy month, but a lot of rumors floating around out there. So I wanted to be clear about something. The members that were on the board that resigned from the board did not resign because of the trailer issue or any other issue facing the district. As you heard from some of the members that resigned or left, they resigned for a multitude of reasons, personal reasons, and some family matters. So with that, you know, I want to, because we really haven't had a chance to do it this year, I want to thank, because a few of us have served with the 5 members that were here over the course of the year. You know, firstly, I want to thank, because serving on the board is very difficult at times, and time away from your family, a lot of time reading, a lot of time asking questions, a lot of time debating things. So it is a tough job, and you know, these 5 individuals, they did put in quite a bit of time, and they should be thanked for it. You know, first off, I want to thank Tenant McGee for his service to the board. Allison Connolly, our last board president, Robin Zwanyak, Dory Malloy, Mike MacArthur. You know, they helped move the district forward, and I wanted to recognize them and say thank you to them for their service to the district. I think that's very important, because on the way out, nobody gets a gold watch. Couple things moving forward. We're going to try to do something to, and as a board, we're going to come up with parameters to recognize employees in the district, any employee. We're also talking about inviting the nights of the week to board meetings so they can be recognized here. We had back-to-school nights that almost every member attended. I want to thank the administration for their hospitality in the buildings. Certainly, we walked around. We saw, in the elementary schools, I think we saw every classroom. And the amount of work that the teachers put in is just remarkable, and how good they looked, and the excitement on their faces for back-to-school night. Maybe not necessarily so much for talking in front of a group of parents, but just you can see how much they love their jobs and what they do. And, you know, sitting here on the board, and certainly the other members that went, that's the part of it that's rewarding, when you go out there and you see their excitement and how much they're into what they do. So I want to thank them all. Thank the custodial staff in the buildings. I mean, the buildings looked they looked phenomenal. You know, you could have ate off the floors in the buildings. And as you know, some of the buildings are very old, but I mean, they looked absolutely incredible. And I also want to give a special thanks to the 5th grade teachers at Central School on their professionalism. You know, we know towards the end of the school year, the end of the summer, they were called upon to go in, and there was some uncertainty where their rooms would be, and then once it was decided, they had to go in and set up their rooms and do all that work that maybe they kind of would have cheated for a few weeks before and took care of. And their rooms look great, and their professionalism through everything is just a testament to the employees we have here in the district. So I want to thank them. And then in the coming weeks, you know, some of the board members, we're going to try to meet with some of the PTAs, see what issues they have that they feel is important things the board can do to support them. And that's pretty much it. But we had a good back-to-school season. The teams are off to some great wins, and it's a good time to be here. Number 19, Ms. Dyer, State of the Schools.
Yes, good evening, everyone. As you know, we are now at the end of the second year of the district's strategic plan, which is a 5-year plan. It is set to conclude in June of 2022. The report for the end of the year of 1920, with all of the goals and the specific activities that were agreed upon for year 2, has been posted on the website. It's also been distributed to the board and is available here for the public this evening. The goals will continue next year, so you also have the 1920 Wall Township Public Schools District goals. These are the same goals that have been part of the strategic plan, and the activities have been updated. So for Student Success Goal 1, we will be continuing professional development on standards-based learning, assessment, and reporting, and continuing to develop relationships with area businesses and organizations, and to develop opportunities to enrich the curriculum. For Student Success Goal 2, the activities are to continue to develop the Visual and Performing Arts Academy and the Future Educators Academy, and to continue to focus professional development on social and emotional learning. For our third student success goal, this one focuses on technology. We will be expanding the district's involvement in robotics as well as STEAM competitions, continuing the CTAC committee, and continuing to pursue future-ready status, either bronze or silver. In finance and facilities, our plan for year 3 is to create a budget that addresses the needs of the long-range facilities plan, relocate the transportation facility, and develop a plan to address growth as per the report of the demographer, which will be forthcoming. Our community outreach and engagement role, the plan for year 3, is to continue to utilize the website and the district Facebook page for public relations, continue Martin Luther King Day of Service as a mechanism for giving back to the community, continue to create and distribute district newsletters, continue the parent engagement workshops, special education presentations, and the ESL parent advisory, and continue to support the parent organizations throughout the district as well as the Crimson Knight Foundation. For school climate and culture, our plan for year 3 is to continue the K-12 interactions and interactions with community stakeholders, and to increase student and teacher recognition. So all of that information is available on the website under district goals, along with the final report that includes the October status as well as the end of the year status for each of those goals in the strategic plan. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
can I ask Ms. Dwyer a question?
Absolutely.
It's Dyer,
I'm sorry.
D-Y-E-R.
I
Thank you.
apologize, thank you. The student goal number 3, for some of us that are new on the board, could you explain what the acronyms STEAM mean and CTAC?
Sure. CTAC is the Curriculum and Technology Advisory Committee that was formed last year. It's a collaboration between our Director of Curriculum and the Director of Technology. And STEAM refers to science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And that's an initiative throughout the state, but mostly our involvement has been with New Jersey School Boards Association. We've had teams enter their STEAM Tank Challenge, and we actually have a team that will be presenting their invention in the finals at New Jersey School Boards Convention in October. We had 2 or 3 teams that reached the finals last year, and we have 1 high school team this year. There's lots of acronyms in education, so feel free to ask. Thank you.
Ralph, may I ask just a
yes.
question as well? On the final report, the October status and end of year report, was that October status presented to the board in October of 18, or is this all just being presented for the first time?
It was presented in October of 2018.
Okay, so we'll expect another October 19 report as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, actually, no. Because last year, the goals were established much earlier in the year. By now, the district would have had their summer retreat, and they would have worked with New Jersey school boards to develop board goals, but you have not done that. So it's only September. You know, I'm giving you the goals now. It'll probably be November or December before you get a mid-year report. You're welcome.
We have some catching up to do.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, we don't have any Board of Education updates. Public comment on agenda items only. Don't think so.
Thank you. Betsy Cross, I live in Wall Township. Sorry, I missed who we got on the board. I recognize Mr. Hall. I don't recognize you. Congratulations. I don't think you have a nameplate.
Not yet.
Can I just get your name?
Adam Nasser.
Adam Nasser. Okay, I heard you. Very good. And then who's the third person?
Russell Gartz?
Russell Gartz. Okay. Welcome to the board. Okay. Just wanted to go over the minutes from the August 20th meeting. I'm guessing everybody has a copy of them. I just looked at them quick. Is there any way to get the minutes up on the Friday before that you're going to be approving? Because it's very tough to go over them, you know, right when you walk through the door. Just want to go over some of Mr. Smythe's comments and then get to mine. On page 4, Mr. Smythe's going through the vendors, and he mentions that when the architect came out. Could you just go over that? It says, that afternoon we contacted our district's architect and asked the architect as well as the engineer to come out and review the condition of the framing. Could you tell me what date that was, Mr. Smythe?
Ms. Cross, to the chair.
Okay. Mr. Adenizio, could you, he doesn't,
This is for public comment right now. It's,
right, but you're going to be approving these minutes, and these minutes are going to be a public record. So if there's something that needs to be clarified, you're going to want to clarify now before you vote on it.
what was your question again?
What date did you ask the architect to come out to visit the trailers?
Do you want that date in the minutes?
Yep, I do.
I don't believe it, I don't believe it was said at the meeting, right?
No, it was.
Do you know the date?
I know the date that was set at the meeting. Mr. Smythe, do you know what date you called them and asked the architect to come out and look at the trailers?
Mr. Smythe, do you have any idea?
I know the day, I don't recall the date.
And what was the day?
No, yes.
So maybe nobody should approve them if you don't know what's in them. I think it's important. What day did you call the architect to come out and look at the
But-
trailers?
It's, Ms. Cross, it says that he called them. I mean,
I know. What day did he call them?
he doesn't know now.
It should be in his timeline. It's not in his timeline. I'm just wondering what it is.
He said he doesn't know.
No,
All right.
for clarification, they came out on Monday. I called them the Friday prior to the Monday they came out.
Okay.
Okay. I did get back the vendor log, and it showed that the architect was out there July 10th, and that was the same day that RIS was there. So I'm wondering why you didn't tell us that the architect was actually there July 10th and they signed your vendor log. So I'm wondering if you knew July 10th that there was structural damage to the trailers and you just didn't want the public to know. Can you answer that, Mr. Adonisio?
Ms. Cross, that's not part of this part of the meeting.
Yeah, it is, because these are your minutes.
Right, these are the
So
minutes.
if he missed that and it wasn't included in there, it's a very, very important piece of information that everybody should know. If we were just trying to hide the structural damage and just change the windows and put the siding on, that's a big problem. And that gentleman, Justin, sat there that night and didn't correct Barbara next to him, and say that, no, I'm sorry, I signed the log, I was there July 10th. Your own Oprah log that came back today says the architect was actually there. So that's a big problem. And I want to know why the public wasn't told when the architect was actually on the premises. And when I kept asking, August 20th, 27th, September 3rd, when did Mr. Smythe know about the structural damage? I asked him to bring the report today. Do you have it with you, Mr. Smythe? What's the date of the report from the architect?
Ms. Cross, he doesn't have to answer your questions right now. This is public comment on the agenda items.
And the agenda is your minutes.
Yes.
And I don't want you to approve minutes that aren't 100% accurate.
But these
Who
were-
wrote these minutes? Did he write these up, Mr. Smythe? Did anybody proof them? Did you listen to the audio and then see if that was exactly what he said? Anybody do that before you're going to vote tonight?
Ms. Cross, do you have any other questions?
I'm going to read what mine says here. Betsy Cross, Wall Township, commented on a request and response for contractor contracts, bids, RFPs, quotes. Questions why we didn't know all of this and we didn't have the companies come in. Knowledge of the extent of the damage, commented, questioned the transfer report. I see tonight you have another $30,000 on the agenda going back from the primary school to Central School and the trailers. I thought you didn't transfer that money on August 20th, because I brought that up. And I specifically recall, I said, why are you transferring money on these trailers? And you said, no, we're not. And Mr. Krupa, was kind of saying, I'm not going to vote on that. And then Mr. Smythe said, oh, no, we're not transferring it. If we didn't transfer it, why are you transferring it back? It's in your agenda tonight.
That's later in the meeting.
No, you're voting on this agenda, and in the agenda you have you're transferring $30,000 back from Central School now back to the primary school. These poor people at the primary school needed the $30,000. Did anybody catch that he was doing that again? I'm still waiting for the quotes. I'm still waiting for emails. Do you know if anybody ever told you that other than RIS to scrap the trailers, did anybody else ever say, you know what? These trailers have lived, they shouldn't be here. I see Mr. Romano's not here. I asked that he be here. Did you ever hear from anybody that worked in Wall? Maybe you can ask Mr. Smythe. Did anybody ever tell Mr. Smythe or put something in writing to him that get rid of the trailers? Because I don't have anything back. He hasn't given me the emails. He hasn't given me the reports. Keeps asking for extensions. And I don't know what the board's doing.
Ms. Cross, that's on the agenda.
I'm asking questions I want answers to. I was here August 20th. It's almost a month later. I still don't have the information. And you're the board president, Ralph. Mr. Adonisio, you're the president. Take
know.
control.
We do have control. And what we did was we saw the issue with the trailers.
What was the issue? You got all the emails back. You withdraw your Oprah.
I explained that to you.
I know. What was in it? What was in the emails?
I didn't get
What
the
was in the
emails.
text messages?
I withdrew it before I got it. Because my
Why would you do that?
Because my questions were answered at the board meeting, and as I said in my email to
How
you.
could they be answered at the board meeting? They weren't answered at the board meeting. I've been here all 3 meetings.
They were answered.
They weren't answered.
I'm not
What
gonna
were
debate-
what was in the text messages?
I sent you an email response to this.
I know. You said you got all your information. Now,
No. What I said was, I received all the information I needed at the board meeting.
all right. What was your findings?
My findings?
Yeah.
That the students shouldn't be in the trailers.
And anything else?
Yeah, and possibly, maybe we should look into scrapping them.
Anything else?
There is nothing else. That's it. It's that simple.
What about Mr. Romano and Mr. Smythe?
What about them?
What about them?
I don't know. You asked the question.
You think they should be here?
Ms. Cross, that's not a question that the board's going to answer in a public session or a public meeting.
I'm
So-
gonna
and
answer
you-
it.
you-
The
you-
answer is
You asked
no.
the question, you can answer your own question. You've now been going on for 8 minutes and 45 seconds. Thank you.
Mr. Romano shouldn't be taking the fall for this.
All right, Ms. Cross, do you have anything else?
I'd like you to check over these minutes, and before you approve them, you better be very careful about what's in them before you approve them. And I'm opening all the executive minutes as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it's coming down.
In the meantime, with regard to the minutes are actually a recording of the activities at the prior meeting with regard to the architect visiting the site in July, as referenced July 10th. I don't know the specific date. It was unrelated to the project we were doing on the classroom trailers. If the architect was on site or a representative of the architect was on site, it was part of their facility condition assessment that they're doing for the district that has been talked about at multiple board meetings because they have visited all the schools in the district and all the administrative and operation offices in the district as part of their facility condition assessment. So if they were there at the beginning of July, it was not specific to the trailers. It was part of facility condition assessment. With regard to the transfers, transfers are in accordance with board policy, approved by the superintendent, and then at the following Board of Education meeting, approved by the board. But regardless of the approval by the Board of Education for the transfer, because the work was stopped on the trailers, there was not the need for the transfer of the $30,000 for the work that was to be done. So the transfer that was previously performed as transfer number 7 was reversed, and then an additional transfer was generated in the amount of $10,000 because that is the current amount of the bill that we received for the work that was done on the trailers to date by the contractor that's still under review. So you can't add up all the transfers, so ultimately the amount transferred to the central school required maintenance account is $10,000 currently for the school year. That's it.
Thank you.
Kathleen Duran, Wall Township. I had a problem with the minutes prepared from August 20th, 2019. In the space allotted to a recitation of my questions, what's missing from there is the key part of the questions that I'm asking is I wanted to know when Mr. Romano had contacted the health department. Was it before or after RIS or any other contractor entered that trailer? The fact that I asked that question is actually missing from the minutes. It's only part of the question, and that question has not been answered by anybody. Then also on the meeting of August 27th, there are 3 errors in terms of the recitation of what my questions were. First, I noted that my question was about whether Mr. Smythe and Mr. Romano knew that there was extensive damage on the interior and the exterior prior to the time that the funds were transferred. And what's missing from it is the statement that Mr. Romano made to me was that in answer to my question. And it was a colloquy, so Mr. Romano answered me that RIS never entered the trailer, and I pointed out to him that the RIS estimate included an internal investigation and an external one, as well as an estimate, and that Mr. Romano was in fact misrepresenting what had transpired with RIS, and I asked him to clarify it. That's all missing out of the minutes, the entire colloquy. Also, the fact that, I also had a brief colloquy by asking you to pose a question about whether the trailers were inspected prior to purchase and placement on the property. And Mr. Smythe responded to me that he said that neither he nor anyone at his direction had inspected the trailers externally or internally prior to their purchase or placement. It's completely missing out of the minutes, and it's very important. And his statement as to that effect is very important ultimately. And I'll have more to say about that at the end when we go into public comment, but the recitation of what I asked and what transpired during my questioning is inaccurate. I've brought this up before when I have found my questions to be recorded and synopsized inaccurately, and I have a concern for that because I think that key things are being left out on purpose. I can't imagine why not. The rest of the questions not in there. It had to have been eliminated. I don't know who writes these up. I don't know who listens. But I have brought this up. It seems to be an ongoing problem. And in these 2 weeks in particular, there are key questions that and colloquies that went back and forth between the board and myself that are missing. So I'd like to have that remedied before they're voted on. It's really simple. I think someone has to re-listen to it. I know it was 5 minutes or less, that they should listen to it and get it right. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Duran. Could you just tell me what page you're referring to so I can notice it myself?
Sure.
If you said it, I missed it, I'm sorry.
There's two. August 20th, it's the business meeting. The page where they go into public comments, so I don't know if it has a page number on it. Hold on. You'll see my name at the beginning of the...
Starts.
I see it. Thank you.
You got it? And do you need it for the 27th? Yeah, and also page 9. On August 20th, it's page 9. I questioned the date that Mr. Romano contacted the health department. That's for August 20th on page 9 of 20. And then for the August 27th meeting, it's page 8 of 11.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none, close public comment. How are minutes developed? My understanding of minutes from other things is that it's not every word that's recorded, because then that would be a transcript. It's more of a highlight of different things that are done at meetings. Does this board operate differently? Is there more that's supposed to be in, less that's supposed to be in?
Minutes of Board of Education meetings vary by school district. Minutes are a recording of the actions of the meeting. Some districts will take public comment and say, not even identify those that were speaking by name and generalize the topics as being spoken about, or just naming the topics. Other districts will have essentially a court reporter that will transcribe the minutes, and there's a lot of districts that are in between. But the minutes are a recording of the activities of the board, specifically the actions of the board, that we have public comment, that there was public comment, or that there was not public comment. Depending on the meeting, considering the meetings of the last month and the importance of them, I do my best to, include as much information that is provided, or much comment that the individuals provide. But again, it is not a verbatim transcript of what is said during public comment. And if the board wishes to move in that direction, then we would have to approach it differently than how we're approaching it, because that would be a very time-consuming process if we're going to look to have basically verbatim transcripts of the meeting. I mean, the meetings are recorded, we have audio and video, so if anybody wants to see the specifics of what was said, either as public comment or as response to public comment, there is a database that has that.
Thank you.
Ralph, may I ask a
Yes,
question?
sure.
Is there a, Mr. Smythe, I don't know if you're the one to answer this or legal counsel, but what is the required presentation to the public of minutes before a vote? Is there a minimum time frame that it's expected to be out, or is the night of the meeting acceptable? I'm naive to that.
The minutes should be obviously provided in time for the board and the public to review it prior to the vote. There are some cases that talk about ample notice before the board would vote on it, and obviously the community would have it posted as part of the agenda. When that agenda goes out, usually it should be done 48 hours in advance. But sometimes that's not possible, and if, again, we're dealing with minutes of a meeting, you try your best to keep up with those so that you're not delaying and voting on minutes for meetings that were from months before.
Although the practice in Wall Township has always been to provide the minutes the night of the board meeting that the board was approving them.
Thank you.
Although the board members receive them prior to.
So going forward, could we change that, put them out sooner when the board gets them, they're put out?
That's the desire of the Board of Education, absolutely.
Comments from anyone?
I would be in favor of, providing the minutes that when they go out to us, they go out to the public as well.
And I would second that. I think, based on the circumstances of where this board is with the community, while it's challenging, if there's a need to address the timing of it and how fast the turnaround is, that should be communicated to us. And if there's flexibility needed on certain occasions, we should know about it. But I, as myself, as a board, member coming tonight, just seeing them myself, that's the reason for my question. So I know it's difficult, and I'm not trying to punish anybody, but if it helps us become more transparent, then it's something we should consider.
The one thing I'm going to need to check, because I don't know the answer this evening, is whether there's a board policy specifically addressing that. If there is, and it does say that we do it the night of the meeting, then we'd have to change that policy procedurally.
Mr. President, I have a
Yes.
question. When the board is provided minutes, do you or any of the other board members ever respond back and challenge Mr. Smythe, saying, well, wait a minute, change this or change that, or have any comments that maybe you recollect something different than what is being portrayed in the minutes? Because what I'm worried about is Ms. Cross getting a copy, or the public getting a copy at the same time the board does. The board gets it and says, oh, wait a minute, that's not right, Mr. Smythe, can you fix that? Fix it on the record. And then now it's like a discrepancy between, typographical errors, just maybe, maybe misrepresenting what board member said something, distributed to one to the other, just minor things like that. I just wanted to know if you ever get them and then go back, and then Mr. Smythe would redo them and then resend them to the board meeting, and then the one that actually gets posted the night of is the amended one that fixed any clerical or typos or that type of thing.
The answer is yes, we have done that in the past where something doesn't look right or it's not. The most common are just like little errors that we correct, but yes, sometimes,
right. So
substance
my point was that
gets
if
clarified.
when that happens, we're going to have to be cognizant of, we're sending it out to the public the same time the board's getting it. If the board does see these problems and fixes it, then we're going to have to re-put it out to the public again as an amended one, saying these are ones that were fixed by board members who noticed mistakes on it. So it just becomes a bigger process, which I'm all in favor of. I'm just wanting to make sure that everybody was clear that this is the unintended consequences of doing that. But I think at the end of the day, it's something that should be done.
Well, we can provide the minutes in advance of the Board of Education meeting, but we would still provide them to the Board of Education members prior to going to the public, as we would with the full agenda. So that the board, it is one of the privileges of actually being on the board, is you get to review it. And if there is any comment, you can contact me. We can discuss it. I can review it. If warrants changing of the minutes, they would be revised. And then we would make it as part of the agenda out to the public, which would hopefully alleviate that cumbersome concern of redoing minutes.
Right. But there'll still be probably, more eyes on something, or certainly always pick something else up, we sit here and hear it, and sometimes you can read it, and it sounds all right, but it might not necessarily be. Did you have something?
Oh, I was just going to say, with that also, I would assume that that would include committee minutes and reports and things like that. I know we're doing committee of the whole and a few different things, but that would also go for chairs getting their minutes in as well.
As best as possible. The problem is, with some of them, everybody works, and sometimes trying to get them in as quick as possible is just not necessarily possible.
All right, and there's also some circumstances where we have a meeting maybe, a couple days before we have, a public meeting, which, would mean that those minutes would be out. So if we're going to switch the policy, I would say that or if we need to fix the policy, we should have some clarity in terms of what the legal responsibility is.
Yes.
And then how, we go about determining a timetable within the policy that's in accordance with that.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Mr.
Yes,
Martin?
I don't want to mislead anybody, but this doesn't mean that the notes are going to be any more accurate. Things are happening every day, and changes are coming every day. 2 days before, 3 days before, 4. So you can only do your best, or that's all we'll be doing, is note-taking. Thank you.
All right. Okay, moving on, number 23. We do not have any new policies for first reading this evening, but we do have recommended approval after the public hearing on the second reading of the following policy, 5120, assignment of students. I will open up public comment on this policy. 5120, page 3 of 5. I'm sorry, what? All right. Can I have a motion? 5120, assignment of students, revised.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with it. What did you revise?
This is the second reading. We did it last month, and it's been up for over 30 days now.
All right, and I didn't get to read it, so what did you revise? Maybe you can just give everybody a quick summary. We have 3 new board members.
This is not comment time.
Yeah, it is. You
This-
just said if I had any questions
Well,
on it.
sorry, comments on this policy.
I know.
Okay.
I don't know what the policy is, and I'm sure the 3 new board members don't either.
Well, the 3 new board members will be abstaining from it because they haven't had input into it.
Mr. Adonisio, I'd like you to tell me what the policy is. You're voting on it, so
It's
you should know it off the top of
5120,
your
assignment
head.
of students.
Right, so read what it is. What?
Ms. Cross, that's not what this is. Do you have a question on this policy? Or comment, I'm sorry, comment on this policy?
I do. I don't know what it is.
I'm
I
sorry.
can't find
that's-
it.
That's,
I just
it's
picked up the
online.
stuff.
That's your comment.
I don't know what it is, and I would like to know what
It's
the
been
policy is.
posted online. So you don't
That's what
have,
the president's going to tell me. It's online.
well, this is the second reading of it. We did the first reading last month.
Right, so tell me what it is. Give me the quick summary.
Ms. Cross, that's not what this is about right now.
Anybody have the policy so I can read it? No?
Is there anybody else for comment on this policy? Seeing none, could I have a motion?
Make the motion.
Do you have a second? Mr. Smythe?
Mr. Krupa. Ms. Mangan?
Yes.
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Yes.
Mr. Wondrak?
Yes.
Mr. Gartz?
Abstain.
Mr. Hall? Abstain. Mr. Nasser?
Abstain.
Mr. Adenizio?
Yes. All right. Number 24, recommended approval sidebar agreement between the Wall Board of Education and the WTEA for new club advisor stipend at the high school beginning September 1st, 2019 for the 1922 contractual period. Can I have a motion? All right, we'll do A, B, and C. B is the recommended approval of settlement agreement between the Wall Township Board of Education and PC and LC. And C is the designation of signers on the new bank account. Could I have a motion on that?
I'll make the motion.
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Chris?
Me.
Could I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Smythe? I'm sorry, questions or comments on this from the board? Seeing
Ms.
none?
Mangan?
Yes.
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Yes.
Mr. Wondrak?
Yes.
Mr. Gartz?
Abstain.
Mr. Hall? Abstain. Mr. Nasser?
Abstain.
Mr. Krupa?
Yes.
Mr. Adenizio?
Yes. Number 25, Ms. Dyer?
Thank you. Can I have a motion by consent agenda for item number 25, the superintendent's report, items A through S inclusive?
You have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
You have a second?
I'll second it.
Any questions, comments from the board? Seeing none, Mr. Smythe?
I would just
Oh, I'm sorry.
say, I'd like to thank Dr. Jared Borstein for the wheelchairs. You can highlight that. That was nice.
Happy to thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Mr. Smythe?
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Yes.
Mr. Wondrak?
Yes.
Mr. Gartz?
Abstain.
Mr. Hall? Abstain. Mr. Nasser?
Abstain.
Mr. Krupa?
Yes.
Ms. Mangan?
Yes.
Mr. Adenizio?
Yes. Number 26, Mr. Smythe.
Okay, under the business office, I ask for a motion to approve items 26A through O by consent agenda.
Could I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Could I have a second?
I'll second.
Any questions or discussion from the board? Seeing none, Mr. Smythe?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I have a question.
Yes.
About O, maybe it's just a parliamentary thing. Why are we paying to have that student transported to our school from Manasquan? Is that a deeper question? Answer?
No, we're not, we're charging them.
Oh, we're charging.
They're paying us.
Thank you for clarifying.
But we do pay. It's, we'll get into that when we do like a board retreat, and we'll have Mr. Gross explain a lot of different things. Yes. Mr. Smythe, roll call.
Mr. Wondrak?
Yes.
Mr. Gartz?
Abstain.
Mr. Hall? Abstain. Mr. Nasser?
Abstain.
Mr. Krupa?
Yes to all items with the exception of C as it pertains to me.
Ms. Mangan?
Yes.
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Yes. Hold on one second.
Mr. Adenizio?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, okay.
At this time, public comment for any school district issues. Keep in mind, we have a 5-minute policy, 5-minute timeline, time limit policy that could be extended.
Betsy Cross, I live in Wall, I might need it to be extended. I'm just a little unsure about what Mr. Smythe was saying, that you had the architect come over July 10th, RIS was starting work on July 10th. Did you specifically ask them not to go into the trailers, Mr. Smythe? Because if we were hiring them to do an assessment at Central School, obviously the trailers would have been an issue. And if the RIS was over there working, I would think the architect would say, oh, what are they doing? Why didn't you call me before you were going to go out for bids? Can you go over that, Mr. Smythe? Mr. Adenizio?
Well, why don't you ask a few more questions, and then we'll tackle everything.
Okay, I'd like to know that. In the minutes that Mr. Smythe prepares, he doesn't talk about how he went out for quotes. I've asked this at 3 meetings now. What did he give them to give us a quote? And why he sent me back a response today, which really didn't make a lot of sense. He's saying in here in his minutes the price was going to be $60,000, but he didn't go out for quotes. And he's supposed to be following a purchasing manual and state law 18A-18, and he's not following it. So I'm not sure what in the world is going on here, but we've got some very, very big issues. It has been referred to the Comptroller's office, the Attorney General, Monmouth County Prosecutor's Office, Office of the Auditor. It's been referred to 5 different state agencies. And now we need to get to these answers, because everything that comes back doesn't make any sense. Everything that we're told, it ends up being a lie. And now the vendor report comes back, and now it says July 10th, the architect was there. So that's a very big issue. Why isn't Mr. Smythe doing his job? And Mr. Smythe, can you tell us tonight, did anybody tell you to get rid of the trailers? What was the date? Did you have any vendor or any employee tell you that? I'm not sure why you keep hiding these emails. Why didn't you give them back? It's almost a month. And Mr. Adonisio and Ms. Dyer, why aren't you making him give them back? Ms. Dyer works,
Ms. Cross, the Board of Education cannot, and Mr. Gross responded to this, the Board of Education has no power, zero power, to make a district employee answer questions. At a board meeting, I can certainly turn to Mr. Smythe or Superintendent and say, do you know the answer to this question? If you do, you can answer it. If they don't know the answer, I can't make them answer.
Okay, so can you just ask Mr. Smythe to answer my 2 questions?
Do you have other questions?
Those are my 2 ones. Once I get the answers, I'm probably going to have another question. So if he could answer those 2.
Well, let's go through the list.
No, I want to
Ms.
go
Cross,
in an order of my thought process.
Let's go through the list. What other questions do you have? Or comments?
Did the state approve Wall Township buying the trailers? Did the DOE approve Wall Township buying the trailers back in 2007? Does Mr. Smythe recall that he actually got the official sign-off for that? I did get back today the minutes with an attachment, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but Brian Smythe's name is on it. Does he just want to answer those questions while I get more?
No, we'll take some more.
The trailers were built on or around a septic tank. Did the architect tell you to test the soil or who to hire to check if it was safe to put trailers over a septic tank? Because all it says in the architectural plans is septic tank filled in per custodian. If Mr. Smythe can let us know, because I know he was an engineer prior, who filled in the septic tank, and did we test the soil before we put trailers over it? Can Mr. Smythe let me know if, when he applied to the state to use the trailers, did it increase the capacity at Central School? So if you could have 500, could you now have 600 in Central School? Could he let me know why he had the wrong amounts in the application?
What application is that?
In the application when they went to get the trailers.
I'm sorry.
When they filled out the application to get the trailers originally. Can you let me know why the payments are not directly to the carriers, but it's going to Chase for $313,000 a year for 5 years? Why don't the payments go directly to the vendor? Why don't we answer those, and then we'll go on.
All right. 540. Mr. Smythe, do you have any answers to any of these? Okay.
And then we're going to continue after that?
Probably not.
Okay. First question, as far as asking the architect to not go out to the trailers when they were on site at July 10th, that answer would be no. I was not out at the site on July 10th. I was not even
Who was
aware that the
there?
You can't interrupt him. Not aware that the architect was actually out on the site on July 10th. Again, it was part of their facility condition assessment where they visited all the schools. I don't know whether they went out on the trailer or not. There's a report that's going to be provided to the Board of Education hopefully within the next month or so as part of that facility condition assessment, and I'm sure the trailer is going to be incorporated into that report when they cover Central School. With regard to quotes, if you go through Education Services Commission or a co-op, you can exceed the bid threshold. If you're going out for quotes, you're maxed out at $40,000. None of the quotes we received exceeded $40,000, so there was no issue with
But you didn't go through the co-op.
any of
He didn't go through the co-op.
not awarding purchase orders that were not in excess of $40,000 based on quotes.
But he did not go through the co-op. Let's make sure that that's clear. I called the co-op. He did not go through the co-op.
Okay.
You didn't. Tell me, did you, Mr. Smythe? Did you go through, did he go
Ms.
through
Cross,
the co-op?
You asked your questions, he's going to answer them now, so don't cut him off.
We've been referred
Did he go
apparently to
through the
five.
co-op?
Don't cut him off.
Well-
Let him answer.
Purchase orders did not exceed $40,000, so they can be done as quotes or co-op.
What did
It really
you do?
doesn't matter because it's.
It does matter.
It was under the amount of $40,000.
You budgeted 60,000.
Ms. Cross.
Did you
Nobody
skirt
budgeted
the bidding laws?
$60,000. You could say it at every meeting. It was never budgeted at $60,000. However.
Want me to show you a
Ms.
copy?
Cross, hold on.
It's in
To
your,
5 state agencies. When any one of them actually respond to you, and if they're more than welcome to come in, they can review anything they want, because there's no issues with the award of contracts, whether it be quotes or through a co-op. Did anyone tell me to scrap the trailers? I'm not aware of anybody telling me to scrap the trailers. Hiding Oprah
Wait, wait,
requests.
wait.
We
Ms.
don't
Cross,
hide
Wait.
let
Oprah
him, no,
requests.
let him, it's not back and
I
forth.
thought RIS
No.
said to
Ms.
scrap
Cross,
the trailers.
Ms. Cross.
Wait, I want to know,
Ms.
did
Cross.
he know that RIS said to scrap the
He
trailers?
just answered your question.
No,
No,
he
I was
didn't.
aware. I thought we were talking beyond RIS. I thought that's pretty much been established. RIS didn't want to continue with the work, made the comment. It wasn't the owner of RIS. It was an employee of RIS. It was a contractor that was out there, that was supposed to be out there to do the work, who continued to stop doing the work, who made the comment when asked for his recommendation to make the repairs, was to scrap the trailers. That was not a constructive recommendation, so we moved on from
And what
that
was the date of
contractor.
that?
Ms.
Nothing
Cross,
has come back in
we're not-
I
writing.
don't
Ms.
know the date
Cross.
off the top of my head. I don't know the specific
How do you not know the date? It's a
time
month
from
later.
when the gentleman
Ms.
signed,
Cross. Why isn't
it in your
because
timeline?
immaterial.
It's
But we
not
can
immaterial.
Ms.
Why
Cross,
isn't
are
it
we,
in
are you going to
your
let Mr. Smythe
timeline?
answer the questions, or are
Yeah,
you going
I
to keep
want him
talking
to
over
answer
him?
the questions.
No, you don't, because you keep talking over him.
Mr. President, may I comment, please?
Sure.
I think it's imperative that anybody who comes to the podium shows the respect to the answers, as we would expect of the children in the district that go in every school that we're in. If there's going to be questions and time expected to be added, then the representatives at the podium should be expected to remain quiet until all the answers are given. And if there's time granted for another round of questions, that should be the expectation of this board.
It should all be in the timeline. I shouldn't even have to
Ms.
ask.
Cross.
You continue to interrupt, making it impossible to communicate the answers that you're looking for.
This is the
Everybody is
third-
trying.
fourth meeting.
That's great.
It should
You
be in the
continue to argue,
timeline.
and nothing gets done that way.
I agree. I can't get the answers. Put it in the timeline. I
Ralph,
wouldn't have to
I
keep doing
recommend that
this.
there's no more questions by her at this moment, because this is not acceptable for a board to communicate back to public like this when children will be suspended from school for this type of behavior.
I'd like my questions answered.
Then please refrain from commenting so they can be answered.
We're in this time of public comment, and then I'll be able to address the rest of the questions that have been asked. I'd be more than happy to do so.
Anybody else?
Okay. It's, all right, Ms. Cross, your time is up.
He didn't finish answering
Well,
the
because you
question.
didn't give him a chance.
I'll respond, I'll answer the questions once you've left the podium
Anybody else?
and the mic.
What I'd like to have happen is everything go into a
Ms. Cross,
timeline.
no, Ms. Cross, the
Mr.
timeline he
Adonizio,
created was a
timeline.
courtesy.
It wasn't
That
a courtesy.
It was a courtesy.
It's
He
not
he
this is a
created
$77
document.
million budget.
I
Nothing is
understand
a
that.
courtesy.
All right, Ms. Cross, your
I
time is up.
pay my taxes.
Your time
I
is up,
want
Ms. Cross.
answers.
Your time is up. Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment questions?
Kathleen Duran, Wall Township. I'm going to read just a very short sentence and then follow it with my question. The sentence comes from NJSA 18A:12-24.1 little g of the state ethics code that's applicable to the Board of Education. And specifically in little subparagraph G, it provides, I will hold confidential all matters pertaining to the schools which, if disclosed, would needlessly injure individuals or the schools. In all other matters, I will provide accurate information and in concert with my fellow board members interpret to the administrative staff of the school district the aspirations of the communities for its school. What I am watching happen, and I was very disheartened to hear the criticism of Ms. Cross, to be honest with you, because what she is asking for is transparency and a very simple request that there be a timeline of what transpired here so that the actions taken by Mr. Smythe could be looked at and evaluated to see whether they were appropriate or not. I have read all the emails back and forth. I have seen the non-responsiveness. Her questions are simple. They are almost ridiculously simple, hence her frustration and the frustration of those of us sitting in the audience to listen to it. This is my 4th meeting coming. The questions are, can Mr. Smythe please give us a timeline of how this all took place? We all know there's a problem. We know that kids are not in the trailer now. You'd like us to move on from it. For those of us who care about the process and who care about determining whether Mr. Smythe and possibly other school administrators hewed to their own ethical duties in performing their job properly at all steps, we want to know the steps they took. Because we ended up with a big mess. And as much as the board may want it all swept away now that it's all like no kids are going in there, let's just either scrap them or whatever, I don't care about that right now. I care about what Mr. Smythe did or didn't do and the dates on which he did it. There has a timeline that will establish his accountability. His refusal to answer those questions in email after email and Oprah request after Oprah request, that timeline has holes in it that you can drive a truck through. And I understand that maybe Ms. Cross is not articulating that perfectly well, but she has pretty much done it in writing, absent a few typographical errors. Okay? The questions are there. He's not answering them. That's her frustration. When you are sitting there telling her to be quiet and let Mr. Smythe answer, what she's saying is not only 4 meetings out loud, but in 2,900 emails, he has not answered any of the questions. And the board has a duty to make sure that we, the public, are provided with accurate information. Why? After 4 meetings of 4 months of showing up here, is there no accurate information? We have 3 dates on the timeline. Who cares? I care. I care very much about the process. I care very much about determining whether any ethical or other violations, such as the contracting law, or whether any regulations pertaining to Mr. Smythe's licensing as a registered purchasing agent, I want to make sure all the I's were dotted and the T's are crossed. Now, us looking at that, not even personal. Just want to know if it took place and when it took place. If it took place as it should have, there should be no problem. The fact that question, or the questions that she's asking about, just give us a time frame. When did people show up? What did they say? What did you know and when you knew it? They're the basics of any investigation. Whether you're investigating your own refrigerator repair or whether you're investigating a major corporate fraud, it's the same steps. What she's asking for, however inartfully or impatient you may get with her way of phrasing it, the questions are really very babyish. What happened? When did it happen? And who did it? Okay? It's really simple. Who came to the site? What did they say? What did he know? What steps did he take to make sure that the bids were actually not supposed to be bids, or were they supposed to be bids, or were they supposed to be quotes? We're going to take that timeline and try to determine if he acted properly. If he did, there's nothing to fear. If he didn't, there's something to fear. But we're entitled to the accurate information. That's your ethical duty. It's his ethical duty to provide us with accurate information. And just so you know, there's other the School Ethics Commission has repeatedly said that the school board is allowed to transmit questions from the public to the administrators of the school. And you should be fighting, along with us, against anything that creates an impression among the public that their trust is being violated. And the failure to turn in this real basic who, what, when, where, why information that should have been done the first time we asked for it creates the impression that something's going on that is being hidden. I had Mr. Romano smirking at me when I was reading the report to him that showed he was lying to me right to my face right then and there. But nobody's doing anything. Nobody's saying anything. He lied. I was reading from the report. He lied right in front of me. He's like, oh, they didn't go inside. Here's the report. We went inside. I'm like, what's going on here? Why can't we get an answer? So I don't share your frustration in the same sense. I don't think she's to be disparaged. Her frustration comes from a lot of writing that you may not be privy to. I've read every single one of those emails, and I've read the responses. I've gone over the Oprah responses, and I've gone over the applicable regulations. There's smoke. I want to know if there's fire, and she's right to ask if there's fire. And answering the question shouldn't take more than an hour or two of work, because, by the way, everything Betsy's asking for and fighting for has to be available for public audit. So read your state contracting law. It's all supposed to be in there. He should be able to retrieve it all within an hour for a state audit. She's not asking for anything weird or unusual or that's not otherwise already open to the public. Everything she's asked for so far is appropriate. Think about it, because I, for one, am losing trust again when I had just started to feel really good, Ralph, about the way you were running the meetings. And I was very happy. I was happy to see some of the board members go who I think have been divisive and very intolerant of questions, very arrogant about people trying to put their questions across in a very short time period compared to the time period allowed to the board to formulate a comeback. It's not easy to sit there and try to put all your thoughts in for 5 minutes. Just like you were able to, you went and asked Mr. Smythe, well, are these comments, in the minutes supposed to be verbatim? And he gave you a glib response of, no, it's just a summary. What I'm pointing out to you is the summary is one-sided, and it always goes one-sided. It goes one-sided in favor of Mr. Smythe, and it shortchanges the report of everybody else. I'm saying there's a problem. And if you actually read them, and I take notes of my own comments, then there's a problem. It's not just a glib response of, hey, because, Mr. Smythe gets 4 pages and my question took 3 lines. So you're missing, the point is being missed about what I'm asking and what I'm saying. So a little more patience towards Ms. Cross. I understand your frustration, but I'm telling you, I've read it all. Everything that she's asking for is a thing that needs to be maintained by the school district and provided. The dates of when these things transpired, the bids, the quotes, that information, the people involved, all okay. Let's have the information and let's put Betsy's questions to bed. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment?
Hi, I'm Ann Moonen. I live in Wall Township. I just would like to ask the policy committee to look at policy 0167 and 0168 over the next 2 months, or at least the next month. 0167, because I think you need to clarify in policy what exactly it means when you say you can come up here and talk during the first public comment session. Is it you can only come up and talk about items that are being voted on, or is it you can only come up and talk about items that are on the agenda, whether or not they're being voted on? As a previous board member, I remember we talked about items that were on the agenda during first public comment period, whether or not we were voting on it. So that should be clarified in 0168. 0167, and then in 0168 is the policy that we were talking about earlier about recording board meetings, and you might want to look at it. I think it's been a while, maybe 2 years since that's been updated. So I just wanted to ask if that be added to the agenda for the policy committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Questions?
I'm Samantha Bassett. I live in Wall Township. I have a question about the renewal applications for the temporary use of the central school trailers. They are signed off by Mrs. Dyer, Mr. Smythe, and Mr. Richens, and an inspector by the county office. The last time it seems that they were inspected was in August 16th of 2016. The date was also given on the application for the 2017-2018 renewal application. However, there's no inspection in 2018-2019, and no county inspector signed off on that. Can you talk a little bit about what that inspection process involves, and if anyone in the district is also involved in inspecting the trailers to fill out that application for renewals?
Mr. Smythe, I know this was brought up at a previous meeting, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but could you go through that?
Because the trailers are considered temporary classroom space, the district is required to receive approval on an annual basis to utilize them as a temporary classroom space. The Board of Education approves a resolution for the submission to the State Department of Education through the county office for approval to use those classrooms or those trailers as temporary classroom space. We submit the application to the county office, and the county office makes a determination whether they will come out and do an inspection on site or if they'll approve it without the inspection. I don't know what decision process there is, when they decide to come out or not come out.
Okay, so the last time that we know that they came out was 2016, and no time after that?
Based on the applications and the approvals we have, yes.
Okay. And then I just want to clarify some things in the timeline and about July 10th, the architect being there. And you said that was for a site inspection of the school district. July 10th is when the first contractor, RIS, was there and began work according to your timeline. On that day, you were told to scrap the trailers or, quote, take a match to them, as is in the other minutes. So if this architect is on site to do a site inspection and they're not, you have a contractor here saying these trailers can't be fixed and they should be scrapped, why isn't the architect looking at the trailers at that time if they're there on site anyway?
I can't speak for what the architect did that day. Again, it wasn't scheduled specifically to go out to Central School. That was part of their district-wide assessment of our facilities. I would think that would include the classroom trailers, but the architect of record has not had any communication with us with regard to their inspections on any of the school sites, including the Central School on July 10th. Just also to correct, I don't know that the comment with regard to scrapping the trailers by RIS was made on July 10th. I believe it was that would have been the second time they came back out to the trailers to restart the work, is when that would have been said, because it was the last time they were on site. So there's,
okay.
I mean, the architect may have seen them working and thought nothing of it and continued with their building assessment.
Mr. Smythe, was the architect aware that we were moving forward with repairs, since it was talked about that we had repairs scheduled for quite a while for those trailers for the summer?
As part of, one of the kickoff meetings with the architect on the facility condition assessment, we reviewed the long-range facility plan that we were working with, and on there, that was one of the items that was discussed as a project moving forward this summer.
Okay, thank you.
And then just two more quick things. The timeline that you created, I know that you said it was as a courtesy. However, it leaves off the August 5th FNF meeting. It has all the other FNF meetings where the trailers were discussed. And I was wondering why that is left off. It also leaves off the pesticide application on August 15th when they were treating the ant infestation. And then just my last question is that HTHI was not approved by the Wall Board of Ed as a state contract vendor. This is the second contractor that was working on site before they were stopped. So I'm wondering if you could discuss where this contractor came from and the process of all that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to, or you want to?
With regard to the August 5th F&F meeting, it was essentially an oversight. I'm trying to recall whether it was even, I think it was just discussed that we were going to be, we identified the cost as to be determined, and the discussion was that the work was going to be completed prior to the start of school, but it was just simply a oversight in not including it on the timeline. There was nothing intentional regarding it. With regard to the pest, in the scheme of things, with the work that was being done on the project, the pest control application was not deemed as part of the significant scope of the work. It was just something that was done in addition to or as a result of what the findings were, because when the siding was removed, the ants were, became evident, they were disturbed, they became very active, and then, just like we would in any situation where that was identified, the pest control company that we contracted with was contacted to treat the site. With regard to HTHI, they're not a state contract vendor. The work was not awarded as a state contract vendor. The work was awarded by obtaining quotes for the project. Where exactly they, where we became aware of it, I don't know the answer to that. As a facility manager, you have communication with other facilities managers in Monmouth County, as well as Ocean County. If you're looking for a contractor to complete work, you're under the gun. You're contacting anyone that you can contact to get a reference for a contractor that may be able to do a project for you.
Anybody else?
Hi, Scott Rowland, Wall Township. I have 2 children in Central School. I have issues, as you're well aware, with this trailer debacle. Again, I'm grateful for the decision that was made not to put the kids in the trailers, as I have a daughter in 5th grade. When RIS made the comment to whether it was official or unofficial, or an employee, or the owner of the company, that comment was made to Mr. Romano to scrap these trailers, correct?
I think so, and also the not knowing what employee said it, that's just something relatively new too that we found out. It wasn't truly aware of what employee said it. You just assume there's a contractor on site and somebody says something like that. You assume maybe it's someone in a position of leadership, but clearly this particular person was not.
It wasn't, and I think for clarification, it was said it wasn't the owner of the company. I don't know what hierarchy was, the on-site supervisor, the manager was the only one on site at the time.
Stand corrected, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
And I was there when it was set.
Okay.
So we rewind a few meetings back, and the board was asked, and the question of why RIS walked away. We all assumed they walked away because they thought the trailers weren't repairable. The board was asked. Mr. Romano was here. Nobody knew the answer as to why RIS walked away. Now we go one meeting after, and Mr. Romano comes out and says, okay, this is why they walked away. Okay, so he came clean. Now, what I'd like to know is the comment made by RIS to Mr. Romano, was it passed on to Mr. Smythe?
Didn't you just say you were
the
there when they said
recommendation
it?
of scrapping the trailer? Was it passed on to you verbally, or was?
I was there when the worker on site said it.
Okay.
So it didn't need to be passed on to me.
Okay.
I was there.
And that's it. I mean, that's the only, you were there when it was said, and But, I mean, the meeting before, I mean, you were asked, I mean, why didn't you?
Well, because you're making an assumption that the reason they left is because they thought they needed to be scrapped. And I don't know that to be the case.
Okay.
You know, they didn't want to continue with the work. The trailers, just because a contractor has made the statement that they think, or a worker for a company says that they think they should be scrapped, that doesn't mean they should be scrapped. Because there was a number of other reputable contractors who were willing to give quotes to make the repairs. There was a contractor that was on site making the repairs. We've had our architect of record, make the statement that the trailers are repairable, that they don't need to be scrapped. So the engineer came out with the architect, made a recommendation for the repairs to be made, for a portion of the framing of the trailer. So there's been a lot more contractors and professionals that we've hired that have said not to scrap them, to move forward with repairs. It was just RIS, a worker for RIS, a foreman, project manager, whatever he may be, when I asked for his recommendation or a suggestion on how he would go about the repairs, it was to scrap them. That was not a constructive recommendation, in my opinion. They stopped work for the second time on that job. Mr. Romano had a conversation with the owner. The statement was, it wasn't said that we are leaving the job because we think they should be scrapped. As far as a clear knowledge of why they would not continue with the work, I don't have an answer to that. But at the time, after being out there twice, starting the work and stopping the work and pulling men off the site, we needed to move on. We needed to get somebody that was willing to come out and get the work done so that we were in a position to have the trailers ready for the start of school in September.
Okay. So on August 16th, this is your timeline, right? Mr. Smythe, you typed this up, right? This is your timeline. So August 16th, HI starts removing the damaged T111 siding to expose the framing. It says August 19th, architect and engineer shows up on site to view the framing and siding by the contractor to prepare details to make repairs. That's on August 19th. Little ironic that that's the day CBS 2 News showed up. Little ironic. So my question is, and then it was the day after August 20th that the media showed up and the architects and engineers were there the same day. The day after, there was finally paperwork submitted for a building permit. Okay, so going back a few days, the 16th, the T111 was removed. The 19th, it was removed to expose the framing to see what kind of work the project would entail. So the 19th, the architects show up to look at everything to come up with a plan, as your timeline says here. My problem is, I was there before that, and I have a picture of brand new studs framed out, which I'm assuming, but I kind of have a little knowledge here, brand new studs framed out as a nailer for the new T111 to cover up all the rot. Now, the 16th, they removed the T111 to expose it according to your timeline. The 19th, the engineer showed up and the architect to assess the situation. Well, if they came on the 19th to assess the situation to come up with a plan for work, why was their work already done before the 19th? There was work done. Construction was done. There's new studs framed out as a nailer for 4x8 sheets of T111 to cover the rot before the architect showed up to come up with a plan. The work was already started. I'd like to know why. If the plan wasn't to cover that rot, why was the work done before the architect and engineer showed up?
Mr. Smythe, do you have an answer to that?
Sure. So CBS News, that was August 19th, is what you're referring to. And
The
you
day
think
the
it's a
architect and
coincidence,
engineer
the architect
showed
and
up.
engineer.
Yeah, it's
So-
coincidental,
so, yeah. But on 8/16, which was the Friday, is when the architect was contacted to show up, before CBS News was on site. We acknowledge that, right? that the architect was contacted when the work started on Friday the 16th.
By who?
So, by me.
Okay.
When? You didn't put that anywhere. You have an email.
Ms. Cross, please stop yelling out.
Prove it.
Stop yelling out.
So,
And that was stated at the last meeting, that they were contacted on Friday. And said again today. I contacted them on Friday when HTAI started the work and was removing the framing. The extent of the damage to the floor joists became evident. As far as a nailer on the perimeter for, replacing a nailer, I don't know that that would be construed as the requiring a structural engineer for the replacement of that,
it's framing. It's framing.
such as the floor joist would necessitate it and the rim joist. But the architect was contacted on Friday to have the architect and the engineer come out. They were scheduled for Monday morning, which they came out. Based on that review, they gave direction to continue to remove the skirt or the T111 around the perimeter so that all of the rim joists could be inspected so that they could develop the drawing that was required by the building department for the issuance of a permit.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think there was, I don't think there was transparency with any of this. And, listen, I don't come to these, I'm new to this. I don't come to these board meetings. I live a busy life. I have 3 kids, a wife, a dog, and 3 jobs, and a big mortgage. I really don't have time for this, but I'm annoyed because I don't think there was transparency from the beginning. And my guess is that work that was done is the nailer for the new T111. I know it. That's what that is. And that shows me that they had all intentions in covering up all that rot and putting my 10-year-old daughter in that trailer. And it makes me sick. There's definitely shenanigans and no transparency.
But that doesn't correlate to the contractor starting the work on Friday and the district contacting the architect and engineer to come out on Friday to inspect the work that they were uncovering.
But they started work before the architects and engineer came out. That's my issue. The architects and the
But the architect and
T111
engineer was already contacted to come out. So they were going to inspect the work that was being
Okay,
done.
so why did the contractor start work before the architect and engineer came out? He started work.
Mr. Smith, I think the question is, did they actually start doing repair work, or were they still taking tear down work?
Well, no, it's not excuse me, Ralph. It's not a question. I'm telling you that they did.
No, I saw,
yeah, yeah.
I think the framing you're talking about is when
Yeah.
you come off the parking lot, the
That
underneath.
was all brand new
Right,
work.
I did see that.
It was done.
This was underneath the trailer on the
Yeah,
ground?
on the ground.
The nailer for the new T111
Yes.
to go up over all that
Okay,
rock.
well, that's
Yes.
not
All the
structural.
framing.
Well, that's
The
not-
framing's not structural?
The framing that supports the skirt underneath the trailer is not structural because the trailers are supported by the steel that is sitting on the foundations. The framing they put down was pressure-treated wood that they put on the ground for adhering the skirt to.
Mr. Smythe, you have a background and you that enables you to understand this. Do you know of any other way to remove rotted floor joists and/or sister up new floor joists, any other way other than ripping up the subfloor and doing it that way? Do you know of any other way to do it?
Yes.
On that trailer, you can replace those rotted floor
I'm not
joists.
speaking for myself.
These
However,
trailers.
The engineer that was hired to review the job, the detail recommended was to sister up the floor joist without removing the subfloor within the classrooms. That was the detail that was provided by the engineer. It was 30-foot long floor joists, 30-inch long floor joists that were going to be used to sister up the ends of the joists and secured from the exterior of the trailers without removing the subfloor. The work that was going to be done on any subfloor would have been the replacement of any areas that had been identified as soft or where there was issues with during the school year. But the repairs made, the repairs provided by the detail of the architect and the engineer for repairing the floor joist did not require the removal of the subfloor.
Okay, but I still have, I mean, you answered my question. I really have nothing else. They started work, though. They started work before the engineers and the architects did their assessment. Work was started. I mean,
Well,
that's an issue.
The work was supposed to be started before the architect and engineers because the work didn't originally necessitate the architect and engineer coming out to review the work. So ideally, the contractor would have removed all the damaged T111, replaced it with plywood, and put the siding on the two sides of the trailer we were looking to do. Replace all the T111 skirt that was along the bottom perimeter, put new nailers or framing, but again, it's not structural framing, that which is by the crawl space or underneath. And that was only to secure new pressure-treated plywood to the framing that was underneath. But again, that was not structural framing, and that could be installed without the need of a detail from a structural engineer or the architect. It was the framing that is above the
It's a
steel
repair, right?
of
I mean,
the
it's
trailers.
it's any way you look at it, it's a repair. It's the start of repairs, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but it says right here that the architects and engineers showed up to view the framing, to prepare details, to make repairs. But repairs were started already, days before that. That's my issue.
But not structural repairs. The repairs underneath the trailer, putting nailers underneath the steel framing, it wasn't structural framing.
Okay, you answered my question. That's all I needed to know. I'm good.
Thank you.
Good.
Anybody else? Questions, comments?
Hi, John Lamagra, Wall Township. Just have a couple questions real fast. What's the status of the trailers now? What are we doing? Have we made a decision of what we're doing?
We have not. We are waiting for reports back, estimates on scrapping them, repairing them, moving them. So those are the options. They're not going to be used for instructional space, but if there's because they're mostly wood, and of course wood can be repaired, if it makes sense to fix them and use them, repurpose them for something else, we might look into doing that. But if it costs too much to move them, then it might not be worth doing anything with them. Or possibly maybe we can try to sell them and maybe get something if somebody wants them. But we don't know yet.
Else to probe.
But we don't know yet because we're waiting for all that to come back.
Okay, and then maybe I missed this because I wasn't here at the very beginning, but have we made a determination about the school buses?
We have not.
Okay.
We
sent a letter? We talked about last meeting sending a letter to the town.
The town in communication, they have met with the owner of the airport to discuss zoning.
They did wind up, because I know there was a issue there. Right?
Yeah, I think they were supposed to meet maybe, I think it was a week ago, Wednesday, maybe a week tomorrow, I guess, possibly. I think that's when they were going to meet to go over some things. It's a big site with many different zones in it.
Right.
And, certainly the township is well aware of the board and the district's feeling that, that site would be very beneficial for us. And certainly, I know some of the members there understand that, and there's zoning issues and things they have to go through, but we're hoping at the end of the day it all works out for us.
And what about the contract with Howell? Can we get out of that?
That I don't have an answer to.
Because that was a pretty bad contract from what I understand.
Who told you that?
Well, I talked about it here there was a woman who came down last meeting saying
that
that
doesn't mean
we
it's
could get
true.
sued for any kind of.
That doesn't mean it's true. That somebody said it in public.
Well, I was sitting here and no one disputed her.
Well,
We're not going to start talking about that at a public
The other
meeting.
part of the contract is that we were supposed to be in already, and because they're having work done and different things, that interferes with us. So with that,
We have options.
we have options.
Okay. That's what I just want to know, because I'd rather have it here in town.
Oh, so would we.
You know.
And again, and I said it at a previous meeting that, the district's number one concern was making sure we kept our staff, because, we have bus drivers that know the students, that care, and we don't have the problems that a lot of these private companies have, where bus drivers pull over on the side of the road and leave bus loads of kids.
Right.
We don't have that. We have bus drivers that know the parents when they're coming to the stop to pick the kids up. So number one concern, keep our drivers. Worst case scenario, if we have to go a couple miles out of town to keep them, that's the best option. The ultimate greatest option would be, if we can do it at the airport.
I'm with you at that. I just was worried about, and I've been thinking about this, about what that woman said. And Mr. Gross, no one disputed her.
We have options.
Okay, because there was a lawsuit thing in there, that she was talking about something about being responsible for ground damage or, like pollution damage. That's what she spoke of.
That's what she spoke of, but there's no lawsuit. I don't know.
No, they said there could be a lawsuit.
Anybody could sue anybody for anything.
That's an answer that I just don't want to hear. I want you to tell me.
But it's truth.
Of course it's
Anybody
the
could
truth.
sue anybody for anything.
Yes.
That doesn't
but-
mean they're going to win.
But why put yourself in that position? You as a lawyer should know better than that.
As I said, we have options.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
I hope you understand that we're not going to talk at a public board meeting about the contract that's in place between us and some other entity, so that we would be talking about what our options are. That doesn't make any sense. I'm sure you wouldn't want your lawyer to let you know something about that in public.
Thank you. Anybody else? No, Ms. Cross. Because you had your time, and Mr. Smythe is going to answer your questions.
No.
Because
No,
yes,
Scott went over, a couple people went over, I'd like to go over.
you did go over.
I know, and
Mrs.
I'd like
Cross,
to go back, I
Mrs.
have
Cross,
questions
you
on
have
the
not,
trailers.
you have not been recognized
I
to
would
speak.
like to
You have
go
not-
over on the trailers.
You've asked that.
I'm
and you've
asking to
been-
go over a few more questions. He didn't answer if the state approved the
and
trailers
Mr. Adonisio
in
said-
2007. No, Mr. Smythe didn't answer my original question.
Ms. Cross, I'm going to just ask you one more time. You have not been recognized by the chair, and as you know, you're out of order, and therefore you need to either sit down or you should leave.
Mr. Adonisio, I'd like to get my questions answered, and I have more regarding the
well,
trailers. You're
Ms.
the president,
Ms. Cross.
not Mr.
Okay,
Mr.
Ms.
Gross isn't the
see,
president.
all right, this is the issue we run into.
Yep.
You talk, I talk, you talk, I talk, we respect each other. So I want to be clear, I want every question you have to get answered. And
But
that's
they're
what I've tried to
not.
do.
The problem is
And-
they're not, and you're writing back to me that you can't make Mr. Smythe answer them. So we're having a public meeting, and now he should answer the questions.
And he tried to answer him, but you kept talking over him.
Well, and I said, when everyone was done with public comment, I'll continue with the rest of the
Yes.
questions.
So your
Okay, but I
questions are
still
going to get
have more
answered.
questions.
How many more questions do you have?
I have more regarding it.
All right.
I want to
You-
know, I've sent them in. You're not answering them. So that's why I want them on the record now, and I want them in the minutes.
You had almost 10 minutes the first time.
I know. This is a,
But instead of getting to the
issue
questions,
with-
we dance around with many other things. I want your questions to be answered. I really do.
So let me ask them.
But letting him answer the questions and then talking over him doesn't get us anywhere.
all right, I'd like to know, back in 2007, the board was supposed to get stamped plans approved by the DOE. So that's the question Mr. Smythe didn't answer. I'm trying to find out if the Department of Education ever approved the purchase of the trailers back in 2007, that we cannot figure out right now how much they actually cost, because Mr. Smythe can't provide the payments other than a lease agreement
Ms.
for
Cross,
$1.4 million.
The
Okay.
background, the other, just the questions.
That's the question.
Well, there was a lot more
Okay.
to that.
Purchasing subject to a bid. Mr. Smythe did budget $60,000 in the February, it's in the February F&F minutes. Anybody can go online and look at it. It shows $60,000 for the Central School trailers. So he should have bid, not quoted, the trailers. He still isn't saying
So
what date.
what is the question? What is the question?
Why didn't he, if he was getting federal money, he would have to have done the bid. But since he was using taxpayer money, he got around it and just said, I'd like my bid to come in around $38,000, and that's what you put in the F&F minutes. I'm trying to figure out why he didn't go through the proper process of getting a bid rather than getting a quote. And I still don't know where HDHI came from. I've sent that in for a month now, and I've asked for Mr. Romano to be here. He's not here. I'm sure he's watching at home. Where did HDHI come from? Who found them?
That was answered.
No, it wasn't answered. Wasn't answered. There was the usual runaround.
The question would be, what does it matter?
You hired somebody that you said was a co-op vendor that wasn't. You
Absolutely
hired
not.
somebody.
I've never said
Don't
that.
misrepresent.
It's in your
That's not-
F&F minutes. It's in your F&F minutes. It says, July 5th, co-op vendor, amount to be determined. And HDI's quote is dated July 5th. You said that on July 5th, you didn't know, you thought it was going to be a co-op vendor. No, you go back and look at your minutes. Because when you tell so many lies, you can't keep them straight. You've got so many
Does it say co-op
lies.
vendor and then it says HTAI as a contractor, or is the vendor that's listed there, is that blank?
It's blank.
Okay, so we
Right.
don't say that HTAI was hired as a co-op vendor, correct? We don't. We don't even have the amount
No,
that
you
HTAI
have-
provided a quote for
you
because
have
it says,
co-op
excuse me,
vendor.
Let me
Let him
finish.
finish.
Okay.
It says TBD. So it says co-op, no vendor, and the amount is TBD. How you translate that to us saying that we hired HTHI as a co-op vendor is beyond me.
Because your bid that you attached in your Oprah says it came back, they drafted it July 5th. How could they possibly draft it July 5th if you said you didn't know till July 6th?
Yep.
That's where you
All
keep
right.
getting, that's why your timeline is so important, because you
Do you-
got so many lies in it
What
that
other
keep coming
questions do you-
back.
What other questions do you have?
Just for clarification, just to give you an example why this is so difficult, none of the dates are July 5th.
Here, I'm going to hand
Or
it to you
July
right now,
6th.
and you're going to read it, okay? I'll
Okay,
hand it to you right
And
now.
it's going to say August 6th.
It's going to say August. It's going to say August. I
Well-
agree with you with that.
But you said July.
Your F and F minutes of July 5th have
Right.
the blank, and it says co-op vendor.
Yeah, exactly, because originally what was discussed was that the district was going to
I
look
don't think
into
there was a meeting
co-op
on
vendor.
July 5th. Was it?
I don't remember.
August 5th.
You
keep saying July.
What's the date of that?
You keep saying July.
This is August 5th. You keep saying July.
I know. It's August 5th. In your August 5th minutes that you left
But you
out
said
of your...
July 5th.
Right, which you conveniently left out of your timeline, and you said it was an oversight. It says co-op vendor, price to be determined. How did you not,
Yeah.
right, well, how did,
so-
you have the quote right there, it says August 5th, so how did you not know that night? Was the guy doing the quote at midnight for you? So your minutes, you did not include that sheet, and you hid it. So anybody that looks online can tell that that's missing. Your August 5th minutes have amount to be determined co-op vendor, right? And
What is the question?
why would you say you were using a co-op vendor when you knew you weren't? You have it's dated August 5th.
Well, because first of all, this could have came in after August 5th. If they went out August 5th to do it, certainly we didn't have this at the F&F meeting, and the only thing discussed
Why
at the F&F
didn't you have it at
meeting-
the F&F meeting? If they wrote it up on August 5th, when did they come and visit?
But they might not have sent it to us yet.
When did they come over? Somebody knew they were hiring HDHI. We're trying to figure out, where did HDHI come from?
We went out for 3 quotes. All right, do you have any additional questions, Ms. Cross?
Yeah, you wrote in your July 5th minutes, renovation of trailers will be done by a co-op vendor for $38,000. This is started to schedule on July 10th. You never had a bid for $38,000. So I'm not sure, again, why you wrote that in your minutes. This timeline,
Again, because what is said at meetings, that's what we put down, because maybe that was the intention, that was the thought at the time. I can only report back at meetings, at committee meetings, what is said. We're not making this stuff up. This is what was said.
no,
You
it
know,
looks like criminal negligence.
On
Yeah.
how? On what?
Because what you're doing is you're trying to not fix the problem, and you're trying to pay a certain price and overestimate it and then transfer the money. That's exactly what looks like that happened. You weren't going to fix the trailers. You were going to change the windows,
I hope when
change
you
the
use, I hope
siding.
when you use that word, Ms. Cross, you be very careful.
Yep, I will.
Oh, please.
Criminal negligence.
Please, be very careful.
Make sure you write
All
it
right,
down.
All right, Ms. Cross,
Please, be very
we're
careful.
not going to go back and forth like this. Do you have any additional questions?
Yes. On 8/18, the Friday before the public meeting, in the renewal application for temporary trailers, Mr. Smythe wrote he was replacing exterior renovations, siding, and windows. That was all he had planned on changing. Then the Board of Health gets called, CBS News is here, Channel 12 News is here. We don't know when, but Mr. Smythe
What is
says
the
he
question?
called.
What is the question?
You need to have Mr. Smythe do a proper timeline, Ralph. As board president, what you have given the public is unacceptable.
First of all, 8/18
It's a month later.
8/18 is Sunday. I didn't fill out any application that said whatever you just said I said, so.
8/8, the agenda that is posted on 8/18, let's see. It's the agenda that's posted on the Friday. So whatever the Friday is, 17.
16.
So it's the agenda on the 16th. I can't read it because it's a copy. The agenda you posted on the Friday, which you should have posted, which I downloaded at 4:20,
Which was posted.
which was posted,
Okay.
right.
All right, so that's okay.
It's okay. He clearly says he was only doing exterior renovations, siding and windows. He wasn't fixing the structural damage. That was the Friday.
On 8/16,
Yes.
on the agenda that's prepared that week for the following Tuesday on 8/20.
Right.
So then on 8/16, when the contractor starts the work and starts removing the T111, we call the architect and engineer and
What
have them
time did
come
you
out.
call him? I've been waiting for a month now of when
What
you called
time?
him, who you called.
The
You still don't have it. Who? Where,
Does it matter
confirm
what
it.
time
All right,
I
It
call?
does matter.
Why?
All right.
Because
all
it should be in your timeline,
No, no, but
who you
what-
called,
Hold on.
who you spoke to.
Ms. Cross, do you have any additional questions? Because Mr. Smythe's going to answer them, and we're going to go home.
Did the state approve the purchase of the trailers back in 2007?
You already asked that one.
I know, he didn't answer it.
Because you didn't
haven't
give him
sat
a
down.
chance, so we're going to, once you finish, you're going to sit down, and he's going to answer the questions.
Why can't I stand up here?
Because you talk over him. That's why. He can't, he's not allowed to answer the questions. I want questions to be answered, but stepping on him while he's talking is not the answer.
Can you ask Mr. Smythe to create a proper timeline of everything that happened? Because it doesn't seem like Mr. Romano should have been the one that should have resigned.
You asked that, and as a board, we don't have the authority to have a district employee make something that's not already in existence. It's like an Oprah
But
request.
he did the timeline, he just left out all the important information. We don't know why these people
Ms.
gave
Cross,
quotes, because you haven't showed
Ms.
what you
Cross,
asked them to do.
Do you have any additional questions?
Why isn't Mr. Smythe returning all the emails that came back? I'm wondering, did anyone ever, if he can ask that question tonight, did anyone in the administration, including Mr. Romano, ever tell Mr. Smythe the trailer should be removed? Those are the two questions I'd like answered. Did the state approve those trailers? Actually, three. Did the state approve the trailers, the DOE? I don't think it's funny, Mr. Gross.
Well, I have
Why
more-
can't I find the
I have more than
payments?
3 questions for you. So
Okay. So the first question is, did the DOE approve the board ever purchasing the trailers? Does he have written confirmation? Because nothing seems to be coming back that proves that they approved it. That's the first question.
Okay.
The second question is, you went out for a 5-year lease agreement for almost $1.5 million. Where's the backup of what you paid for the trailers?
All right, number 3.
The third is, did anyone in the administration, including Mr. Romano, ever tell Mr. Smythe that he thinks that they should get rid of the trailers?
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank
Now-
you.
Any other ones? With regard to the state approving the purchase of the trailers, the state,
Ms. Cross, let him answer.
the specific question was, did the state approve the purchase of the trailers? It was asked multiple times. With regard to that, the state doesn't approve the purchase of the trailers. The Board of Education would approve the purchase of the trailers. The Department of Education would approve the use of the trailers as temporary classroom space. If you recall in the prior meetings, we discussed that we hired an architect, Faraday Vice Freytech, to prepare the plans and submit the project to the Department of Education, along with the educational specifications to allow the school district to use the classroom trailers as educational space. I am pretty confident that that was all approved, since we did move ahead. We have a board resolution approving the architect, submitting it to the Department of Education, and the fact that we actually went through with the project, awarding the contract. I'm very confident saying the Department of Education approved those plans, and that's what we hired the architect to do. With regard to the payments for the trailers, or the estimate, it was stated that the amount put on the application was incorrect. The amount put on the application, and the application being referenced as the application to the Department of Education, is the cost estimate that is prepared by the architect and signed off by the school district and submitted to the Department of Education as part of the application. That does not mean that's the bid. The application to the Department of Education occurs well before you go out to bid and receive bids. The bids came in significantly lower than the estimate provided by the architect and submitted to the Department of Education. In that year, the budget was defeated. As part of the review, all the capital projects that were included in the budget of approximately $1.5 million, rather than including it in that annual budget, the recommendation and the final budget was to lease purchase all the capital improvements for the year. So there was a lease purchase that went out for not only the trailers, but all the other capital improvements. I don't recall them all. I think there was gym floor replacement. There may have been some paving. The RFP and the award of the lease purchase went to Chase Equipment Financing or Chase Equipment Leasing, and the payments were issued to the vendor from a Chase Equipment specific to any one of those projects. And then as part of our 5-year lease purchase, and included in the annual budget, is the payments that we would make as a repayment of the 5-year lease purchase for the total of $1.5 million, which after 5 years, it was probably, an additional $100,000 on top of the initial principal. But that was a result of the budget being defeated. I'll make sure I get them all. Did the architect tell us to have it tested? We're talking 12 years ago. I would say no, or I don't recall, but again, it really doesn't matter. It's what we hired the architect for. So if there was a recommendation to test soil, that would have been their responsibility. They would have had their engineer, their consultant perform those tests or whatever they would need in order to prepare the plans and specifications to locate the trailers where they are.
Anyone ever say scrap the trailers?
Other than the contractor, no.
Okay. Trailers, do the
Only
trailers?
the one contractor, RIS. None of the other contractors said that to me.
Did the trailers increase the school size? That was another question.
The capacity. Yes. That's why you apply to the Department of Education. It's not permanent. It's on a temporary basis, but it does increase the allowable capacity of the school.
Okay. And then I had another one. Payments to Chase, not directly. Oh, I'm sorry.
Because we financed it.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Chase would make the payments based on the applications for payment that the contractor would submit to the architect for their review and approval, and once they were approved, Chase would release the funds to the vendor. We just made annual payments to Chase as part of our lease purchase, just like we make annual payments on any other lease purchase that we have.
And then the site plan, the trailers over an old septic system, it sounded like, that was filled in?
No idea. I mean, that would be something that the architect, again, the criticism is that we spent $40,000 for them to prepare the plan, submit it to the Department of Education, put the bid specs together, review the bids, and make the recommendation and oversee construction. That would be the architect's responsibility to look at the existing site plans to determine that, what is there or not there, and the feasibility of locating the trailers where they did. And with regard to hiding OPA requests, we do not hide OPA requests. This district receives more OPA requests than I can easily guarantee any other school district in Monmouth County without question. And we respond to all of them. However, some are so overly broad and so inclusive of so many things that are unrelated to what is being asked that they are very difficult and they're very time-consuming to respond to. So we require extensions because we have 7 business days in accordance with OPRA to respond. An allowable response to that request is to say, we need additional time because the records are in storage, because you're asking from things from 2007. not something that's readily available in, you know, in the file cabinet in the other room. This is something from 2007. We may need an extension in order to find those records and produce those records. Or you're asking from emails from multiple people, multiple contractors. And it's an overly broad, it's not even a valid OPRA request, but this district goes above and beyond, and we try to make every effort to be responsive with the request for records. Currently, all the questions that were sent in by email have been answered, except for the latest one I received at 4 o'clock, which is a follow-up to the first questions that we received. Because when you answer a question, there's 5 more questions in response to every answer that's provided. We are required under OPRA to provide records if it's a valid OPRA request. And we spend a lot of time doing that. We're required to, that's an obligation. You know, following up on the continual questions and the follow-up questions and the accusations and what time did you call the architect and where did HTHI come from and like who knew him? Like, again, the accusation, I guess, I don't know, they're related to somebody, they live down the street. But again, that's not a requirement to have to respond to them like it is OPRA. So there are other things that are being accomplished in this district that take priority than continually answering questions that are nonstop. And it's always followed up with, hey, this is a district with a $77 million budget, and we should be more responsible. Well, we do need to be more responsible, and we are when we're prioritizing other things that need to get done in this district, as opposed to just continually asking every conspiracy theory question that is thrown at us on a daily basis. And until the latest one of where HTHI came from, all the other questions were answered today. So the comments that all these questions are going unanswered is absolutely not true. They were answered in hopes of actually saving time tonight, which, you know, did not work, but they were answered. And then the only one, like I said, was the follow-up to the response that I had given. With regard to the comment that Mr. Romano lied numerous times, it is amazing what people are willing to say at these public board meetings, but that is so unfair, especially, and you're going to say, well, then he should have been here. He doesn't need to be here, but he did not lie. Because when you make the assumption that a contractor entered a trailer, and what I'm referring to is when you asked Mr. Romano whether the one vendor, the one contractor was in the trailer, and he said no, that he did not enter the trailer, and the answer is yes, he had to be. Yes, he was. His estimate says he was in the trailer. So he lied. The estimate does not say he was in the trailer. The estimate...
There was a rotten floorboard. You could only know that by picking up the carpet.
Mr. Rand, please.
Foot fell through. So he's been on a tirade with no substance. I have another question.
With regard to an estimate being provided by a contractor, if you're doing work on a building
Mr. Rand,
and you know
please,
you're going to have
please.
to repair structural framing, 2x4s, any work that was anticipated in the area of the windows, and you're going to remove 2x4s or you're going to have to sister them up, you would anticipate that you're going to have to repair or make repairs to the sheetrock on the inside of the space without going inside. If it's been communicated to you by the facilities manager that we have localized areas within the trailer that's going to require the removal and replacement of the plywood subfloor, you can include it in your estimate without going inside the trailers. But to say that somebody at a public meeting lied because you're inferring from an estimate that a contractor went into the trailer, it's just not fair. And it shouldn't be happening. But I hope I addressed with regard to all the questions that were answered here, all the questions that have been emailed, but there is other work that needs to get done in this district.
Did Mr. Romano tell
Ms.
you?
Cross, please do not yell.
Answer the last question. Did Mr.
Yep.
Romano
Anybody
tell
from
you
the board have any,
to
before we
scrap the
adjourn?
trailers? Did he ever
I
tell
wouldn't
you
even,
to do that?
don't recognize you. Let's go. Anybody?
Let's
else?
go on the
are we
record,
in-
Ralph. Mr. Adonisio.
Anybody else have public comment?
Did Mr. Romano?
And Ms. Cross, Ms. Cross,
Please sit
please,
down, or you'll be asked.
please
Sit
stop.
down, or you'll be asked to leave.
He is hiding those responses.
Please
Miss-
sit down. Please sit down, or you'll be asked to leave.
All right, seeing none, closing.
I'm walking to the podium for some
No, sorry.
It's,
You let her have another question. I'm going to ask the question that's begged here. The first estimate was for $60,000. It included repair work to the inside and the outside of the trailer. It was $60,000.
and that was said, it wasn't an accurate estimate.
Hold on. Then the next people come. There, all of a sudden, in the F&F minutes, it says we're looking at estimates at $38,000. None of those other estimates include the inside of the trailer, where he just said whether the first guy went in, whether RAS went in and saw the floorboards that were rotted, where somebody's foot went through.
What is your question?
Why did this not go out for bid? The way it should have been according to state contracting law, because the first estimate had the inside and the outside. The subsequent ones were the outside only, and you were going to let the inside rot stay. That's basically it. It begs the question of why the subsequent ones had such a small scope of work when he was on notice that the inside and the outside were rotting. And then all of a sudden you get two low quotes for the outside. Makes no sense.
All right, we have the
Well,
question.
other
Thank you.
than to say that that statement is absolutely incorrect. That is inaccurate. But you know what? Before
Answer
I
the
get into
question.
Hold on.
Mr.
But I
Romano
wanna
asked
clarify that.
Mr. Smythe
All right, can you?
to scrap the trailers. Did Mr. Romano ever put in writing to Mr.
Ms.
Smythe to
Cross,
scrap
you
the
are-
trailers?
you are done.
Why don't you want the
Ms.
answer,
Cross,
Mr. Adonisio?
you are
Why
done.
won't he answer it?
You're done, because you don't let anybody answer the question.
I'm letting him answer it.
Please sit down.
Is he going to answer it? I'll sit down.
Please sit down.
Is he going to answer it? I'll sit down.
Understand what I'm telling you?
Can we shut off?
Yeah.
Silly.
You're gonna have to
Turn-
leave.
Yeah. Answer the question.
You're gonna leave.
I'm going to leave. Once he answers the question, I'm getting my books and walking out the door.
Ms. Cross, I make every attempt to be fair and have questions asked. Storming up to the podium and doing a little tirade is not the way we can do business here. So if you want him to answer the question, you're going to sit down and act like an adult.
Oh, good. He'll answer it. Thank you.
What was your question?
Did Mr. Romano ever say scrap the trailers?
No.
Thank you.
Now, if there's an email in the system somewhere that says that, I'm unaware of it. But with regard to the question of Mr. Romano saying we should scrap the trailers, again, I have to ask, what does it matter? We have one contractor who made that recommendation. We have multiple contractors and professionals that are licensed, architects and engineers that don't say that should not say scrap, and that they should be repaired.
Ms. Cross, all right. That's it.
However, perhaps what will address the issue, or maybe some of the concern with regard to the 60,000 and bid threshold, is the estimate that are provided that say $60,000 or $65,000 includes removal of all the T111 on all four sides of the trailers. There is absolutely no need to remove all the T111 on all four sides of the trailers to install vinyl siding. The scope of work was to remove the damaged T111, replace the damaged T111, which is the wood siding, with plywood, and then put paper and vinyl side. There was not the need to replace all the T111. So any $60,000 or $65,000 estimate provided that included all of that, wasn't applicable, because that was not the scope of the work and it was not necessary. As the summer progressed and we got into August and we were running out of time, the scope was further refined, more so because of the time constraint, was to not side all four sides of the trailer, but to only put vinyl siding on two sides of each of the trailers, which were the worst sides. However, the scope still included all the removal and replacement of the damaged T111, and if anything was found, underneath. But with regard to the replacement of the T111, it was going to be plywood on the two sides that were receiving vinyl siding, and it was going to be new T111 on the two sides that were not going to receive the vinyl siding. So you're comparing, apples to oranges when you're comparing a $65,000 quote or a $60,000 quote with a quote of $33,000 or $35,000, which I believe the other quote was.
All right. All right. Please stop yelling. All right. Any board member have any comments? No?
Yes, I have a comment.
Yes. Mr. Walter.
We were told here, I just want to make it for the record, that 6 agencies are investigating all this, so we should be hearing something soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. Welcome to our new members. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. I'll make the motion.
Second, Chris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night.